Hi, everyone. I am going live here. I'm here with my friends Patty, who most of you probably know, and Kirk Wilcox, who I'm guessing all of you know. Kirk just released a video today, which was great. Um, I don't know how many. Hopefully, you'll get a lot more views on that because I think it's important. It's about RFK and him talking about what? Oh, just shit. Sorry, I forgot I had the stream open, so I heard myself talking in my ear. But yeah, Kirk's video is really good. I suggest you all watch it. I commented on it, but I have not shared it on my Twitter, but I will. And then Patty is also a YouTuber. And she's releasing a video soon as well, right?
Yep, I recorded some last night, and then I realized I feel like I need more information, so I'm gonna record again today.
Fair enough. I've done that before, but that's obviously something you want to avoid. But
Yeah,
if you think it's going to make a better video, then by all means.
I hope so.
So I will be answering some questions here, and Patty and Kirk will chime in. But hopefully, we'll get a good conversation going. Either way, first of all, one question I got was, "How are you?" And I'm doing well. So hey, Patty, you want to mute your mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm doing well. It's pretty rainy here, but happy Father's Day to my dad, my brother, my stepdad, and all the fathers out there. I will be in Wisconsin next Father's Day, so that'll be nice. But Kirk, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, just put up a video. It's gonna hold off until tomorrow to publish it, but now everyone on Twitter today, Joe Rogan and Rose Tico Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I was like, maybe I need to put it up on YouTube right now, so maybe I can get some algorithm luck. Doesn't seem like I have so far, but I got a $50 contribution on PayPal from it. So
Oh, nice.
Today's going pretty good. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, the that whole thing about because Robert F. Kennedy, excuse me, was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he's obviously, of course, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is running for president, much like Dad did. And he's mostly, if you look at his career, an establishment Democrat, but he's always been a vaccine skeptic, by which I mean an anti-vaxxer. And that all of a sudden became very popular after the COVID vaccines came out. So now he's got this anti-establishment sticking it to the man bullshit cred. But yeah, it's he's also, like I said, been involved in the Democratic establishment, which should make him bad, but he's got one good position on something the contrarians like, so that makes him good. And if you don't support him, you want your kids to have autism. Speaking of which, Patty, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm bored.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully this can brighten your day up a bit.
Yeah.
By the way, it is storming where I live, so if you hear a big old thunderbolt or my stream just dropped magically for some reason, that would be why. So, okay. So let's look at some questions. Have you watched Emma Viglin's sports channel? When she's not off into culture war, politics stuff, I think it's fun to listen to. I actually do think she has decent sports takes, even though the rest of her politics are extremely stupid. Kirk, have you watched any of her sports stuff?
No, I have not. This is surprising to me.
Yeah, she's actually in the Young Turks Fantasy Football League, and she won it last year, I think. So because she used to work at TYT, that's how she got there. But yeah, her channel is called ESVN. So Emma Sports Viglin Network. The acronym works, but the what it stands for.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it kind of works, but anyways, yeah, I think her sports takes are actually decent. Patty, you don't really watch sports, so I'm assuming you haven't seen it.
I have not seen it. I don't really watch sports unless it's okay, again, well, you're gonna hate me for saying this. I love baseball. I watch baseball. I watch baseball. I do watch football. And I watch hockey.
I thought you were a Lions fan.
Yeah, you're both Lions fans.
Yeah, I'm a Lions fan. Huge Lions, Tigers, Shock. I love those obvious like Michigan teams. I also love the Colts because I was born in Indianapolis. So
okay. So you like blue and light colored football teams? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, my high school mascot was blue and white too. So.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see here. Next question. Has Jimmy Dore watched any TV show but The Sopranos? I don't know. As Jimmy Dore, The Sopranos is one of my favorite TV shows, but I don't know. Has Jimmy Dore ever referenced The Sopranos or what? Have you heard him reference it, Kirk?
I don't watch enough Jimmy Dore to know that, so I wouldn't know.
Same.
He's one of those channels that like really should be in my wheelhouse, and I do criticize Jimmy Dore from time to time, but like, God, I get so fucking worked up watching his shit that like I can't even deal with it. That he is not featured as much as he should be by rights. But if you haven't watched The Sopranos, it's a fantastic TV show. Kirk, who's your favorite Sopranos character?
Melfi.
Dr. Melfi? Okay.
Yeah.
I am a big Silvio fan. I like Silvio. I don't think he only really has one episode devoted to him, which is the Christopher Columbus episode. But he's usually in the background, and he does that well. And he's one of the few people who can kind of manage Tony. And he's of course his second in command is Consigliere. But Patty,
he's doing those Godfather impressions.
Yeah, those are fantastic. Patty, have you ever watched The Sopranos?
I have never watched The Sopranos.
Okay.
I do like Richie Aprile as like a bad guy. Like he is very menacing, and especially like when Tony ever gets the upper hand on him, especially like when he sees that Tony's housekeeper's husband was given his like
the jacket.
The look on his face is, I laugh every time I rewatch that clip.
Richie Aprile is a fellow short king. He's a very small man, and I actually would wear that jacket. I like the jacket that he gave to Tony. But it's even though it's a little tacky, I would still wear it. But yeah, Richie Aprile's a good character. The second season is probably my favorite season. The season finale of the second season is the best episode in my opinion. But
I don't remember that one specifically.
That is the Funhouse episode where he has to kill. Spoiler alert! He has to kill Pussy Bob-and-Saro, and they have that Rolling Stones song through and through playing throughout. I don't know. It's fantastic episode. But if you haven't watched it, Sopranos is probably my favorite show. I recommend it. Couldn't recommend it enough. So, okay. When are you going to debate Stephen Michael Davis? Dude's been talking mad shit about you. Well, Stephen Michael Davis is a fraud and a coward, so he wouldn't debate me, but he's a waste of time because he's so disingenuous. I don't know. Any thoughts on him?
I mean, yeah, the guy's totally a shill for the military industrial complex. You know, I noticed, I was thinking coming in here, your initials are SMD. That's very close to WMD.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
No.
I think not.
Yeah. I have, as far as my content goes, I'm not really a debate guy. I'm not very good live. I mean, I'm not saying I would never debate anyone ever. I just don't think it's the most fruitful content, and it would have to be the right topic. But I have a few MIC type videos lined up, and I'm looking forward to the "you work for a defense contractor" comments, even though I quit my job 10 days ago now. So that'll be
Did you know all the wars in ancient Rome and ancient Greece, they were fought so that a handful of blacksmiths could get rich from making swords and stuff?
Yes. Which is weird because there were way more wars back then. And like, so the blacksmiths must have been more powerful than the MIC today. So I don't know, crazy.
Yeah, and they say that's why like Smith is like one of the most popular surnames in the West, was because like they're all descendants of blacksmiths who didn't have to go to war. Just saying, big coincidence.
Clearly the bourgeoisie.
Yeah. Okay, so that answers that question on Stephen Michael Davis. How much of a political problem do you perceive the election denialisms of the progressive left and the populist right to be? I would say that the populist right is worse as far as election denialism goes. What they have is much more of they have a harder form of election denialism, which is voter fraud. Because even if we take the idiotic populist leftist theories on an election denialism that, Barack Obama got 2 candidates to drop out. Like, okay, so what? You still say the votes are what they are. So basically the populist left does the ifs and buts game. And that's the equivalent of, we were talking about sports earlier, but you can do enough ifs and buts to get any team in the Super Bowl. And the left is the equivalent of an 8-8 team going, well, if we were in the Super Bowl, we would have won. And so that's just, honestly, it's mostly non-line thing. In the end, most Bernie Sanders supporters ended up voting for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. So I don't really think that's a big problem outside of idiots on Twitter just crying about how it doesn't count. So I think the populist right is more of a problem insofar as election denialism, because basically you can abracadabra away any election by saying voter fraud.
It's funny, going back to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I guess Ben Dreyfuss, according to him, he tweeted this the other day saying that for as much as he said the saddest part about the ARFK getting some traction to me is that not only is he a lunatic with deeply dangerous beliefs about vaccines and stuff, but he was also the author of a widely embarrassing Rolling Stone story alleging the 2004 election being stolen through fraud.
That's right. And I
actually did not know that.
A lot of Democrats will say that the 2000 election was stolen because of all the stuff that happened in Florida. And, that's an interesting topic. I don't buy it, but whatever. I think they have a little more there. But a lot of them say the same thing about the 2004 election. And I don't even know that story. I don't even know their line of reasoning there. But I
guess Barbara Boxer, I've heard Stephen L. Miller really harp on this, that I guess in 2004, Barbara Boxer was not wanting to certify the electors or something like that. I forget the exact details.
Okay. Yeah, I would have to look it up because I watched this this lecture by Kevin Phillips, he used to be a big Republican Party guy. He formed the Southern Strategy, if you will. That was one of his projects. And now he's an independent, and he was giving this lecture to some Democratic Party organization in Ohio. And and the guy who gave him an introduction talked about the fraudulent 2000 and 2004 election. So it's been a thing, and it's not just gadflies, but for whatever reason, that doesn't get that much traction as the rigged primary or the stolen 2020 election. Maybe it's just because it's so long ago now, so I don't know. But anything on election fraud, Patty?
I pretty much agree with I agree with everything you guys have said. You hit the nail on the head. The right's pretty much far more dangerous than the left right now with voter denialism.
Mm-hmm. I really wish these people would live their rhetoric, because it's they say this and then they still go out and vote. It's if it's just going to be stolen, why are you even bothering?
Well, I think Charlie Kirk notably had to argue with his callers about this. They said, well, if everything's rigged, then I'm not even going to vote. He's like, no, you still need to go out and vote. So that's amusing to watch at times.
I've seen that quite a lot. I've in conversations I've had with right wingers lately, I've seen a lot of them just be yeah, the last time I'm ever going to vote was literally the last election. And it's well, if you've always felt like voter fraud was a problem, why was it the last election that you decided to be the last time you ever vote, and not all the way back when Obama was president? Because you guys had complained that there must have been voter fraud taking place back then too.
Which some of them certainly did, but yeah, while I think that's silly, I kind of respect the consistency in a way. It's the people who annoy me who say that and then turn around and vote anyways, because they're just giving the game away. Basically, it's voter fraud when we lose. It's genuine democracy when we win. So
yeah, it is consistent. It's dumb but consistent.
Right. So I guess credit to them for living up to their rhetoric, unlike some.
Yeah.
But okay, when will you go on Stitch and Adam and destroy the New Deal? I don't know, some point maybe. I destroy the New Deal on my channel. So
but didn't you know the New Deal single-handedly wrested the American economy from the Great Depression?
Oh, that's true. And FDR won 80 elections in a row based on the New Deal. So if you know what, if we just, by the way, the New Deal is just what the rest of the industrialized world does. Let's be real here. And so if the Democrats just embraced it, they would win every single race ever, including ones in the past and the future. And it'll be fun.
Yes. So the Green New Deal went so well, clearly, right?
Yeah. Just need to flip that switch and get over to that renewable energy.
Right.
Kirk, do you watch Sitch and Adam?
Not regularly. I've been on their show once, and I watch them depending on like if there's like a guest of interest. I'm interested in. Like if it's you or actual Justice Warrior or Destiny, I usually tune in.
Right. Adam and Sitch are friends. They obviously have a popular show. They're probably starting streaming in like a couple hours or so, but
Yeah,
they stream for so goddamn long. They go for like 8 hours, and it's just I don't want. I don't want to devote my entire day to that, but I am not opposed to going back on and discussing whatever because they're smart guys and they'll put interesting they'll make interesting points even if I disagree with them, which I disagree with them on plenty. So I'd rather go on there and talk about modern monetary theory because they both believe in that, and that's just a bunch of bullshit as far as I'm
print
concerned.
more money theory.
Yes.
Oh God.
We have our own sovereign currency, therefore we can't inflation. Which, by the way, isn't even what modern monetary.
Steven, you got to remember all the inflation. It's not inflation. It's corporate greed.
That's right. Corporations just became greedy in 2021. And by the way, did you see that egg farmers are no longer greedy because egg prices have gone down? So,
oh my God, that whole conversation with eggs drives me nuts.
Okay, Patty, you are an agriculturalist. What do you have to say about egg prices?
People don't know what the fuck they're talking about is what I have to say. People are utterly like, it's like people think that the only thing that goes into like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting ready to rant. This has to do with like that food waste video I'm working on, where people think that they're totally disconnected from the process and everything that goes into the making of a final product or the production of the raw product. So eggs being the raw and final product in a way, they're affected by like outside factors such as like avian flu. So we had a horrific avian flu outbreak this year and last year. And because of the avian flu outbreak, we had a total egg shortage. Not only that, but when the war in Ukraine broke out, we had a deficiency with feed. So we couldn't fully supplement and get all of our feed together. That affected egg prices too. And then like furthermore from there, we had some other different avian illness related stuff that entire flocks. We're talking about like if one bird was found to have the sickness, 400 or 1,000 if they were in proximity of this bird had to be destroyed. So the whole egg prices thing, people think that it's like some ploy for the government to control everyone's food, and it's not. We're just legitimately having a fucked up time out here. That's all.
Well, and yeah, from what I've heard is avian flu is super contagious. So if like one of your chickens has it, you have to kill your entire flock.
It's so contagious that if one bird, like, and that bird can be feet away from the rest of the flock, if it's on the property, they're all gone.
Jeez. Are those chickens then edible then? Or is that just got to throw them in a chicken grinder? Okay, fair enough.
That sounds terrible. Like you have to kill an entire flock if just one bird gets the flu?
Yes. Yeah. So, well, the problem is that it's not just the flu. So avian flu, we do have like cases of it crossing over to people. It can cause severe illnesses in people. We don't have any evidence that shows like if you eat a chicken with avian flu, you'll get it. It has to do with the respiratory, just like with COVID. It's their saliva passing on to humans that may like infect people. And the problem is that wild animals, so it's wild birds that spread this disease. It's not like a chicken just develops avian flu because of evolution. It's because of wild birds like geese that always hang out with chickens. It drives me nuts because the farm that I work at, we have these Canadian geese that hang out with all of our chickens. We don't want them there because they spread avian flu. So.
And they're geese, so they deserve to die anyways. So
worse, they're
you
Canadians.
And your geese hate.
How do you kill an entire coop of chickens? Do you take like a flamethrower to it?
No. So the way that from what I understand, the way that they do mass removal and destruction of chickens is, it might be related to, I think, like CO2 gas chambers.
Oh, okay.
They are, like when I talk with vegans, which unfortunately I still waste my time talking with vegans sometimes. That's like one of their two biggest complaints is about CO2 gas chambers.
Okay, gotcha. So that's how you mass kill chickens, just in case anybody out there was curious.
Yeah, in case anybody wants to do an entire mass killing of chickens. There you go, CO2.
Gotcha. There was Scott Linscomb wrote one of his dispatch articles about the egg prices, and it's actually if you're not a dispatch subscriber, it should be available on Cato. Most of his articles are up there, but I will forward it to you, Patty, because I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. But
I have another theory on the egg shortages. I think it's these woke corporations who are starting a war on Easter and did not want kids to color eggs on Easter Sunday because they want to erase Jesus from the world.
Well, see, you're wrong. It's Sanderson Farms, and they don't want to acknowledge that female chickens lay eggs and that it's actually like male chickens laying eggs. So they're destroying all the female chickens. That's what's happening.
Holy shit. My God.
Eggs, if you scramble the word up, you could spell ESG, huh?
Oh, fair. There you go. Speaking of ESG, I saw James Lindsay going off on it on Twitter. And of course, his response to it was, it's Sovietism, or, something like that. Some hyperbolic bullshit. But ESG is stupid.
Yes, absolutely.
These people who want, Twitter to be a free speech platform, even if it doesn't make Twitter money, isn't that just another form of shareholder capitalism? It's just shareholder capitalism in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like other people like you and I couldn't invest in it. It's just a different form of shareholding.
I think Jeremy Horpdahl pointed that out on Twitter the other day. Just as conservatives were freaking out rightfully about ESG, they just kind of recreated their own brand of it, essentially.
Yeah. And they don't even believe in it, because the second that's there's content moderation in a way they like it, they shift their definition of free speech. And so
exactly
that's something that I'm going to talk about at some point, but I don't want to. Oh my God, I don't want to get the Elon Musk stands on my my comments.
No, fuck them. Look at them.
I mean, it's gonna happen. I'm just dreading the comment section. I really should just stop reading the comment section on the videos.
I think the worst thing is I used to legitimately like Elon Musk, and I still kind of I don't venerate, but I still kind of like him as a business person and a investor, but otherwise at this point, he's a fucking tool to me.
I'm not some Elon hater. I think he does have his redeeming qualities, but
yeah,
absolutely.
Oh my God, the self-promotion, this constant patting himself on the back for how much he believes in free speech and how brave he is, and then it just bugs me. Yeah. And not to mention, of course, the cult of personality around him is annoying.
Yeah.
As are most cults of personality. So okay, let's see here. Okay, that's my Patreon questions. Thank you to my patrons. I will have new videos out soon, I promise. So apologies, been slacking on that. Okay, here to YouTube. Thoughts on ranked choice voting. I personally think its supporters overstated its benefits. So for those of you who don't know, ranked choice voting is this idea where you rank your vote for all the different candidates. Let's say you have 4 different candidates: the Democrat, the Republican, the Libertarian, the Green Party. Instead of voting for just one of them, you basically list your priorities. So let's just say my ballot would be Libertarian first, Republican second, Democrat third, Green Party fourth. The Libertarian doesn't win, therefore my vote goes to the Republican, and so on. I think its virtue is that it would kind of get rid of spoiler candidates, so to speak. But you would have, I think populists don't realize how angry they would be when their person loses, because what would inevitably happen is you would get a candidate who would win, who would not receive a majority of first round ballots, and people would not see that candidate as legitimate. That's the downside, I think. So do you guys have any thoughts on ranked choice voting?
I don't like it whatsoever. I think the problem that you just laid out is exactly what would happen. And then furthermore from that, if I gave my vote to this person, I don't want it to go to anyone else. What if I have a severe virtue or ethics belief that this person totally violates? I'm just not interested in my vote being represented that way.
I wonder if they'd have an option of like not giving other options or what. Because yeah, there's some candidates who I would never vote for under any circumstances.
Yeah.
But Kirk, what do you say?
I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I would say nationally, good luck amending the Constitution and get rid of the Electoral College. But then I think didn't get applied in Alaska like for the last election, so maybe implemented for like local and state elections. I'm not really an expert on that, on the legality of that issue, but I don't really have a strong opinion either way.
Gotcha. Well, certainly for the presidential election, a state could, in theory, award their electoral votes to the candidate who won the, what do we call it, the ranked choice vote, because states basically have autonomy in how they can decide who gets their votes. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Here's what I was going to say. I have this theory about politics that a lot of people really don't like, but it's that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, which I believe are the second and third oldest political parties in the world behind the Tory Party in England. My theory is that they're actually very good at what they do. And the reason why idiot populists are constantly shrieking about them is because they don't really understand what politics is, and they're not very good at it, and they're butthurt they always lose. And so basically what they're good at, the Democrats and Republicans, is building coalitions. And so what you would probably see is a big transformation if that was really embraced in some national way. And they would have to build coalitions anyways if there were more than two parties. So basically legislation would be passed in such a way that is largely indistinguishable from how it's passed now. Basically, people making compromises. Compromises are just made within parties at this point. Ezra Klein likes to say that we do have more than two parties. They just exist within the existing parties. So you'd probably just see our parties change in that sort of way. But that's what I got to say about that. All right. Little bit out here, but have you ever played the video game BioShock? What's your thoughts on people using it as an allegory for the failures of libertarian political and economic philosophy? So I have not played BioShock, but first of all, it's of course based off of Ayn Rand's work, Kirk, right? Who is a libertarian? Ayn Rand's a libertarian, as Kirk knows. Let's go off, Kirk, because it's Kirk. You have played these games, correct?
I played the first one. I got to the final boss, and I never beat it. Yeah, and I think it's based off of a misinterpretation of Ayn Rand's philosophy, especially like right away, like the character Andrew Ryan like dismisses morality altogether, whereas Ayn Rand and objectivists are very serious about morality and the philosophy of ethics and whatnot. So I think it's kind of a misinterpretation. It is a very fun video game, I will say that, and the visuals are very pleasing. So I really enjoyed playing the video game. But yeah, I think it's and also the whole baggage of Ayn Rand getting lumped in with libertarians. She denounced the libertarian movement as hippies of the right, which I think is accurate. There's a lot of anarchist baggage within the libertarian movement, whereas Ayn Rand I'm pretty sure she saw government as a necessary good. So, objectivists are not anarchists. So,
okay. Patty, have you ever played the BioShock games?
I've never played BioShock, but I've watched walkthroughs of BioShock. These are walkthroughs that I haven't finished. So I'm not like very well versed in the story of BioShock, but I'll say this about the game. Like the mechanics of the game were pretty great. The storyline looks great, but I'm gonna defer to Kirk. Like, I know that he's read Ayn Rand's books. I have not, so I'm gonna defer to him on that.
So yeah, I don't.
And I think I was pretty sure. I'm definitely sure. I think I was just thinking, like, did she say like that exact quote? I'm not sure about. So yeah, definitely.
Gotcha. I have heard that they are excellent games. Whatever else is true about them. Okay, I got a $5 super chat from Can You Even Take It? I know this is off topic, and I already asked you a bunch in the PMs. When will you read Berserk? So Can You Even Take It was kind enough to send me all 6 books from Berserk, all 6 of the manga.
Wow!
And I will eventually read it. I promise. I'm very busy right now. I'm in the middle of a move, and and between jobs. So I'm getting ready for my next job, which I have lined up. And I got to get a bunch of shit done before I leave the state of Minnesota finally. But
Let me guess, you're going from being a show for the military industrial complex to being a show for big pharma.
Big oil, actually. We're yeah,
big
fossil
oil.
fuels. That's the by the way, I'm joking. I'm not going to say anything about my new job just because I don't want to deal with this stupid bullshit about it. But
don't forget, all the wars are over oil too.
True, oh, that's right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I'm still going to be a warmonger. By the way, again, I'm joking about the big oil thing.
As soon as I told all of my friends and my family what job I'm doing, immediately everybody started asking me all sorts of crazy questions about like Monsanto and Bayer and how I feel, like if I'm being paid by Tyson. I can't tell you how many people I've been in debates with, like especially if they're, again, vegans. If I say to them, no, there's nothing wrong with this practice, they're like, yeah, that's because you're paid by Big Dairy. And I'm like, who the fuck is Big Dairy?
When are they going to pay me? When am I going to get this big check?
I'm sitting here like, bitch, I wish I was paid by Tyson. I wish they paid me that.
Well, okay. And so, yeah, whenever I would talk about like my more hawkish foreign policy views, I would get the comments of, this is just because you work for the military industrial complex. Like, even though I've talked about how I don't think Americans vote based on issues, I am propagandizing the 10,000 people who watch my videos to vote for more hawkish policies so I can get more job security, apparently, because, the defense industry really needs my help. That's a struggling industry and they need all the people they can get. Right. It's like, I don't know. It's frustrating. That's why I'm not saying a word about my new job, even though it's a completely different industry. I'll say that much. But yeah. Okay. How do you do your research? Or what makes you think of doing good research and having an informed opinion that also is in line with facts? So usually I just kind of read what I enjoy reading. There's a handful of authors that I really like reading. There's various topics that I really like looking into. And then various publications that I read a lot of. And then what I'll do is I'll watch sort of, content fodder, I'll call it. And there's mostly the socialist hipster internet tabloids that are featured on my channel. And so they'll say something that is not in line with what I think, or they'll say something that contradicts what they said earlier about something else. And I'll just kind of go through the stuff that I've already read and fit it all together. So it's usually not I'm researching a topic per se. Sometimes I do that, but it's more often than not, what do I already know and what did they say that's at odds with that? So I don't know. What do you guys do for a process? Kirk, go first.
I just try to explore a lot of times I'll just start with a hypothesis of, I'm pretty sure this is true. And I'll try to explore it more to see if I can find evidence to back it up. A lot of times that does take a lot of work and a lot of research. But yeah, I just try to, I try to explore topics that I'm genuinely interested in, and also topics that I think either there's kind of like an overwhelming conventional wisdom against it, or there's a severe popular misunderstanding surrounding a certain topic. I really, I like the challenge of trying to like bring clarity to those kinds of issues.
Yeah, especially that last one, like popular misunderstanding. How common is that here online? The internet's supposed to be this new thing that leads people away from mainstream media narratives, and then you'll have YouTubers go on about how Citizens United said that corporations are people and money is speech, and then that really requires clarification. So, Patty, what about you? How do you research?
So one of the things that when I figure out a topic that I am interested in or want to talk about, usually it's because I've either heard something from someone that intuitively just doesn't feel right. So I look into it, or it's something that I know is not right. So I try to make sure I back things up. And nowadays, like with research and sources, I'm taking a lot of my sources, not just out of articles online, but now I'm actually using books. So I'm like using academic material to affirm, justify, and provide evidence for the claims that I'm making at this point now. And I've started doing that for even debates that I've been a part of, where I'm like, okay, like my opponent might make some claim, and I'm going to say something like, look, I'm about to pull out a book that is academic, it's sourced, and I'm going to pull out this book and I'm going to cite my evidence for this claim. Are you sure you want to die on this hill? And I find a lot of people like back off at that point about things. So that's kind of what I do with finding sources at this point.
And I always try to have at least one, if not many, primary sources as I possibly can, if it's possible. And I always try to bring in at least a few different sources, so I'm not just like relying on like maybe like one news article or one Wikipedia article, depending on the topic.
Yeah, it's another major thing.
And the best is when you start exploring something. Like the video I made about the FDA just started as me doing a rebuttal to Katie Porter. And like the further I looked into it, like the more I learned and I got more excited and more interested, and then just turned into this like multiple months project.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you do get people who, whenever you provide sources, they'll go, no, that's a bullshit source. But you can persuade people, and the more sources you provide, the better. But of course, I'm lying. I actually just get my script from Lockheed Martin and I read it off. So whatever they say, I just parrot. All right. Should there be a limit on Western support for Ukraine? And if so, where would you draw the line? I mean, like, we shouldn't send them nukes. I don't want American soldiers there. That's kind of the point of sending them weapons, is they're doing the dirty work, because I think we have an interest there. But yeah, wouldn't send them like weapons of mass destruction, and I wouldn't want American boots on the ground. I don't know, Kirk, I know you are generally supportive of Ukraine. What do you think on that?
I think we need to first really think, we need to just generally have a recalibration of like what foreign policy should look like. And I think when it comes to providing aid to a country, I think it needs to be under the scope of, is this in America's best interest? And I think a lot of times America does give out way too much foreign aid to way too many countries, and that I think is improper. But when I'm under the opinion of that Russia went from adversary, where I think you can maybe say that they're an enemy if they're invading their sovereign neighbors in Europe. And the further they, if they invade Ukraine now, what's going to stop them from maybe invading other countries, getting closer to NATO? Is this going to embolden Putin and whatnot? And I think a case can be made that supporting Ukraine in this effort, I would definitely stop short of sending troops to the region, but supporting them with military aid. And I think, from my understanding, that's the majority of the aid. It's raw weapons. A lot of people think it's just like, people keep framing Zelensky as this welfare queen, and people want to like think that like we're just giving them raw money and it's finding its way into the bank accounts of like Ukrainian politicians or whatever. I don't think that's the case. And it seems to be the case that this has really been devastating for Russia's military. And if we can really bring down Russia's military a peg for $100 billion, I think that's a pretty good price. That's a pretty good bargain.
I agree. There's also when the Soviet Union collapsed, their nuclear warheads were in a few different countries. And we didn't want Kazakhstan having nukes, so Russia took them. And the last ones, and I believe they had nukes in Belarus as well. But the country that did not want to give up their nukes was Ukraine. And the United States helped negotiate the Budapest Accords, which entailed sending their nukes back to Russia. And we signed on that deal that we would help defend Ukrainian territorial sovereignty. So not only is it America's word, but it's, understand, if we fail to help them in a significant way, and we already have helped them, but I mean, like, seeing this whole thing through, you will have a massive rush for nuclear weapons, because people will see that as their only deterrence against invasion. Patty, what do you think?
I agree with both of you. I think the problem with America's distrust of foreign aid has to do with the fact that the United States has, I'm not going to use the word failed, but the United States, as Kirk said, gives unnecessary and unreasonable amounts of foreign aid to other countries, which actually depresses their ability to become industrial themselves. So this has happened in countries like Africa. Sorry, Africa's a continent, but countries within Africa where
we've given like Egypt, I think, billions of dollars worth of aid over the last decade or so.
Well, and it's not just Egypt, it's countries like Uganda, it's countries like I was going to say Ethiopia, but Ethiopia is not one of them. Somalia, like these are countries where our foreign aid gets intercepted by nefarious actors, by insurgents. And this is like a huge reason why hunger still exists in the first place within African countries. It's not because no one's giving them anything, it's because they're war torn. And the other thing is that a lot of that foreign aid is in final produced goods. So they're not in like raw products. They're not things like seeds for them to develop agricultural means. They're things like t-shirts and shoes. And what happens when you get an influx of those things that nobody needs? Well, they start selling them to tourists who come to their countries to look at how poor and sad they are. So Americans have been raised on this type of foreign policy, which is really bad foreign policy, in my opinion. And when you look at Ukraine, right, they see other countries that receive our money as welfare queens, as Kirk said. So funding Ukraine is important. It's necessary because Russia fucking sucks. And they are engaging in something that, I mean, they're engaging in straight up war crimes on their neighbor. And who's to say that they're not going to do it to anyone else?
You, when you talked about Africa, you're mostly talking about food aid and clothing aid, as you said. I mean, we do send weapons to Africa, but it's pretty paltry compared to the food aid we send.
Exactly.
And if you want to watch it, have you ever seen the movie Poverty Inc?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It's really good. It takes on the whole foreign aid thing, and it's not just government. Most of it's government. But there are private organizations that are really bad in this regard too. And it's like, it really traps these countries in the cycle of poverty.
Yeah.
And so even Bono, who is like, Mr. International and is probably left of center, he said that capitalism is the best solution for these people because letting them build up their own economies and is what's actually going to create wealth. No nation has ever been raised out of poverty through aid, and that's not. And the aid disincentivizes people working for themselves. So
it's kind of funny because some of those African countries have done things like ban the import of GMOs. And funny enough, the banning of the imports of those GMOs starves African people, and it not just starves them physically, but it starves their ability to engage in agricultural means. Now, some people will say
hold
something
up. Are you getting paid by Monsanto to say that?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is Monsanto no longer exists. They were dissolved and consumed by Bayer. So I'm being paid by Bayer.
Okay.
So even though those seeds are patented and they are owned by Bayer or whatever company has made that particular genetic quality in that seed, that would still allow them to produce food within their own country and start gaining those skills and the means to engage in agricultural norms. Many of those countries, biggest thing is that they have massive civil wars and insurgency problems. So if you don't get rid of those guys, you won't have agriculture in the first place because they just take over people's farms. But it's, I don't want to be mean, but I kind of feel like it's time to start cutting people off.
Fair enough. We got a super chat here, Justin for $1.99. What are your thoughts on RFK Jr.? We kind of covered this at the beginning of the stream. I think basically he's part of the so-called Democratic establishment. He just has this anti-vax streak that made him popular. With certain...
also anti-GMO, apparently.
Yeah,
that fuel.
And he's big. Yeah, he's big in the green movements, but he's also been called a fraud in that regard because it's like he's part of he sides with a lot of companies who are accused of greenwashing, which, if you want to watch a documentary on that, look into the Planet of the Humans, which is an interesting documentary. It's not, I don't agree with its overall conclusion, but it does talk about a lot of corporate greenwashing, which is a real thing. But
he also debated Alex Epstein a few years ago on the issue of fossil fuels.
Yeah, you told me about that because Epstein made the point about how vaccines do have downsides, but they're overall net goods. And he viewed that as a personal attack, right?
Yeah, I think it was misconstrued as a personal attack when I don't think, from what I could tell, he didn't know anything about his RFK's views on vaccines.
Gotcha. Yeah, he mostly I think he's skating off of his famous last name, which again is part and parcel of the Democratic establishment. And he's made this, he's got cred in the anti-vax movement. But no, I think he's unremarkable. And I think his voice is annoying. And I know that's a medical condition, but you have to have a nice voice to be president. Or
I wish
certainly
Joe
helps.
Biden had better challengers from the Democratic Party, like Jared Polis. That would be fun to watch.
Jared Polis is the Colorado
Democratic
governor?
governor of Colorado.
That's
yeah.
right. Okay. What I don't know a whole lot about him. What do you like about him?
He's pretty free market leaning, obviously far from perfect, but compared to most Democrats, he's definitely free market leaning, definitely probably the more libertarian of the Democrats.
Gotcha. The thing is, like, sitting
I think he was
presidents,
one of the few Democrats that I think he did impose. I'd have to look into it, but I think he was like big on like lockdowns and mask mandates, but was one of the first Democrat politicians to roll all of that back. And he got criticism from a lot of people for that.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, the thing is, sitting presidents almost never get serious primary challengers
Yeah.
from within their party. The only two were the two notable ones were Jimmy Carter in 1980 getting challenged by Teddy Kennedy, who was the progressive lion of his party at the time, and then 1976,
1968.
No, 1976 was when Gerald Ford got challenged by Ronald Reagan.
Oh yeah.
1968. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the primary process was different then. But yes, LBJ was challenged by Bobby Kennedy, and he dropped out because of that. But we got a $10 super chat from Fat Brown Buffalo. Thank you, Jank. SMD and Kirk, you guys align a lot with Sitch and Adam, but seem to disagree on government spending. Would you be down to discuss New Deal, inflation, taxation, and regulation with them? It would make a good conversation. Like I said earlier, I'm certainly not opposed to going on there, and I'm not opposed to discussing things we disagree on. So I don't know, Kirk, would you be down to go on there sometime?
For $100,000, because that's apparently the going rate now. Joe Rogan's like throwing out like all this money. Come debate RFK on my podcast and I'll give $100,000 to your charity of choice.
Okay. Now, I think the debate thing is trickier than some people think. So the Richard Dawkins position was always that he would never debate a creationist because that would give some implication to the audience that these things are of equal footing, evolution versus creationism. And I understood that position. And also it's worth noting that creationism explicitly is the belief that the Bible is inerrant on matters of natural history. And so basically they don't even believe in arguing it. They just believe that the Bible is the ultimate authority and that it can't be disputed. Anything that does contradict it is false by definition. So, and I think it's a little trickier with vaccines, but I get the idea. Vaccines in general have support from the medical community, as I understand. And so that one doctor who's written a bunch of pro-vaccine stuff doesn't want to debate RFK because he doesn't view anti-vax stuff as a legitimate position. And I think a lot of people are kind of dismissing that position, or they're characterizing that as cowardice. And I don't necessarily think it's that. That said, it might be wise for him to debate the position, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
As a Christian, okay, so I'm not a presupper, which means presuppositionalism is the position that all people, even if they're atheists, know God. So God is like this inevitability, or the Christian God is this inevitability that no one can truly deny, and everyone feels intuitively, even if they verbally will deny it. And young earth creationists tend to be the same way. They tend to be presuppositionalists who believe that the earth is literally 6,000 years old, which I do not hold that belief. I'm a Christian scientist, so I believe in evolution, and I think that it's in line with the idea of the Christian God. And you guys are welcome to think that I am loony for that position. But I don't debate presuppers or Christian or young Earth creationists, because they just, I mean, they'll reduct everything down to, but does the Bible say that? And it's not really possible to have a coherent debate with a lot of them. And if he's a anti-vaxxer, that to me kind of shows that there's no way to have like a real intellectual conversation with him about it.
The problem with debate is that people can just gish gallop tons of bullshit.
Exactly.
And they can throw something out there that's like skewed or out of context, some figure like 90% of vaccines ended up with and they can say that, and it takes them 10 seconds to say that, and it would take like, somebody could make a 20-minute video kind of unpacking that and why it's what they say is skewed. So I think I don't have a problem with people discoursing on this, but like a live debate just doesn't seem like it's going to be fruitful, and that's mostly just for entertainment than anything.
And that's like the problem. Like people I can't see this as being for like any purpose of people actually learning. And I mean, because I view like the concept of theology to discuss religious issues or to discuss theology and the beliefs of people. I believe that for the most part, unless that person is being distinctly dishonest and you just kind of want to make fun of them, those type of conversations should be conversations which are held respectfully and civilly amongst each other. I can't see a conversation like that being held respectfully.
Yeah, I would probably get in the mud real quick, I feel like.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter say something like, even if like RFK won the debate and the other guy, I think his name is Peter something, I forget his name, even if
he wears
a
bow tie,
looks like an idiot, that wouldn't like suddenly mean that vaccines cause autism or whatever.
Right. This guy has written several books on like vaccines, as far as I could tell. He is not afraid of ducking discourse on it. It's just I'm guessing he thinks that a live debate would be fruitless, which he's probably right about.
Oh yeah.
So I don't begrudge him that. But $5 super chat from Khalif Jones. Thoughts about Ukraine war and the weird amount of Russia and Putin supporters among the conservative base. So when I was soliciting questions for this, a guy posted just a bunch of Russian flags in the comments. I do
blow
get those
it out
people.
Your ass.
I agree. I do get a lot of those people, and there are weirdly a lot of conservative fans of Russia. Assuming that they're not bots, which certainly some of them are, or they're not some propaganda farm. But I think a lot of the pro-Russian people have this idea that like the West has fallen and become decadent and is filled with people trying to convert everyone into being gay. Excuse me. And Putin, among other traditionalists, is a vanguard against that. And so ultimately, he's the good guy in this equation. And that's really stupid in a number of ways. But the number one reason being that Russia, by every metric, is a complete basket case, including like they have lower marriage rates, they have higher HIV rates, they have higher, abortion rates than America. Whatever social metric that social conservatives care about, Russia is worse. So it's like, what are you going to gain by becoming more like them? It's going to be shittier by all the metrics that you supposedly care about. But again, that's assuming that they're not bots, which some of them certainly are.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting to see that. I don't think it's hard to tell how many of these people, I've definitely seen it, people who are genuinely pro Putin and pro Russia because of what you said. They view Putin and Russia as this like force against the degeneracy and the decadence of the West. But I think a lot of it, I got to imagine, if I'm being charitable, and I'm not even sure this is charitable, but I think a lot of it is just political tribalism. They see that Biden and the Democrats and the establishment media have thrown their weight behind Zelensky and Putin, or not Zelensky in Ukraine. That was an error on my part. So they're throwing their weight behind Zelensky in Ukraine, propping up Zelensky as a hero. Nico Satirakopoulos, an objectivist, pointed out like you know, it used to be this criticism from the right of like soy boys on the left, like, oh, they would never be manly and stand up for their country. If at the first sign of trouble, they'd probably go run to their safe space. Now you have a guy like Zelensky who's like saying, I don't need a helicopter ride, I need bullets. And he's staying in Ukraine, and he's really, you know, standing up to this thug Putin and this like against like seemingly insurmountable odds. And they want to like frame him as a welfare queen or whatever. And why? Because I think a lot of it, from what I can tell, a lot of it is just political tribalism, because Biden and the Democrats and the establishment media, they lied about weapons of mass destruction. So how do we know that they're telling the truth here? They just want any reason to knock that down and find any reason or justification to like undermine the Ukraine effort.
That's definitely part of it. Go on, Patty.
Oh, there's this deep ideological belief that a lot of like far right and I mean even some moderate right populists have, right? And it's the idea of I'm going to bring up trans stuff, but it's the idea of like what makes a man and what makes a woman. That's the media obsession right now. What makes a man and what makes a woman. So for them, right, like Joe Biden, the Democrats and liberals or progressives are a bunch of cucked out feminine males who just want everybody to engage in degeneracy. And the opposite would be like Vladimir Putin and his authoritative rule over Russia, in which like LGBT people simply either don't exist or they are like this extreme minority where they're pretty much inconsequential, like their existence is inconsequential. And the idea of manliness and masculinity is well described and observed within like Vladimir Putin riding a fucking rhino while being half naked. So there's like this very deep ideological belief about how people should live. And ironically, many of them, which wouldn't actually prefer, as you guys said, wouldn't actually prefer these things in real life, would rather prop up a regime that believes that all men should never cry versus can we make sure that everyone at least gets a fair shake in life? Like, I don't know, like these people are weird.
A lot of people have bought the bullshit that Russia is like this tradcon paradise. And
yes,
as Elon in the chat says, at least know which bathroom to use.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but really, do they? Like, come on, like you think about you think about Russia, like in Russia, big burly women are carrying around giant logs. Is that trad wife material? Is it trad wife material that like some big burly woman who's like the Futurama snoo Amazon could like, you know, like that's not, people romanticize trad life. I actually did the trad wife thing. It does not work out, guys.
Yeah, that's that could be a podcast topic in its own right, but we'll they have a cartoon idea of what things are like there. And a lot of people really do think that like wealth and abundance have spoiled us and that they've corroded our values. And now everyone's trying to turn gay in Russia or in America. And it's just like, this is silly.
They're turning the white men gay.
Yeah. So that's why Vladimir Putin has this weird following with certain type of right wingers. I got another question, and I'm not going to bother pulling it up, but since we're on Ukraine, I'll just mention it now. Someone's like, what's the best case scenario for how the Russia-Ukraine war ends? And obviously, like, to answer it realistically, you know, people a lot of times think that it's just inevitable that Russia's going to win because Russia's just so much bigger and they have their own military capacity, and they do have their benefactors in the form of China and Iran, or not benefactors, but people who are willing to sell to them. And they are authoritarians, so they're much more likely to ride out any domestic political resistance. Therefore, they're eventually going to win the long game. And while there's certainly truth in that, understand that victory in Ukraine looks very different from victory for Russia. Because victory for Ukraine is Russia leaving. That's it. They don't have to go and take Moscow over. They don't have to assassinate Vladimir Putin. They don't have to win some epic battle and get Russia to sign. They just have to get the Russians to leave, which the Taliban was able to do that. Or not the Taliban. The Afghanis were able to do that. Taliban were one of the people fighting them, not their totality, but like it's harder to take over and occupy a country than it is to defend your country. So realistically, the best case scenario is Russia leaving, but probably doesn't include Crimea. And I don't know if Ukrainians are willing to settle for that. I don't blame them if they're not, but that's probably where it ends. That's my guess.
I do want to add that a few weeks ago, I have this recurring segment that I started where I like take Bernie Sanders rants as investment advice, but I broaden that to capture the military industrial complex dorks. And during my last segment, I bought a share of Raytheon because I'm like, well, we're giving all this money to Ukraine. All these weapons contractors are about to get filthy rich. And you know what? I'm down $2 since that investment. So now I'm in favor of even more war because I need to drive that stock price up.
People are so stupid. They the thing is like the company I worked for. Yeah, we had defense contracts, but we also had like civilian contracts with other countries. So like when we pulled out of the Iran deal, which yes, does that make war with Iran more likely? Sure. But we also lost our ability to do a deal with them. Iran was going to buy like a huge civilian fleet, and Boeing was going to sell them to those planes. And the company that I worked for is a big contractor for Boeing. So we lost an enormous amount of business on that alone. Also, we lost an enormous amount of business with the Russian government when we implemented sanctions on them. So it's like people just have this myopic view that like, oh, defense contractors want war. It's like, no, even defense companies have multiple fingers and multiple pies, and not everything that goes towards war is good for the bottom line. So that's
I don't see. Oh, I was just going to say that I don't see in the end game, like you said, Ukraine's only job is to push Russia out, and I do not believe that they're going to have Crimea back. Crimea, in my opinion, has been under Russian control for so long. It has, I don't know. I can't really see that. I can just see Russia probably giving up or, just being fully forced out. I don't see the conflict getting any bigger than it is now. Like I've seen a lot of like doomerism about how like, oh yeah, Russia's just going to decide to nuke everything. No, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see. Like you said, I don't think Crimea is realistically going to go back to the Ukrainians. I wish it would, but it's
same.
Probably not on the table.
Yeah.
Next question. Can you do a video on AI fear-mongering or an analysis of what life would be like if America stayed on the deflationary gold standard of the Gilded Age? So the second one is more in my wheelhouse, but it's a big hypothetical.
Can you repeat it?
He wants me to do a video on what would America look like if it stayed on the deflationary gold standard of the Gilded Age. I feel like we'd be living in a different, very, very different world than we do now, but that's just my knee-jerk reaction. As far as the AI stuff goes, I don't know. Some of it does even scare me. Even the optimist I am, I'm worried that Skynet's going to kill us all. But sometimes I see stuff that's like, these computers are getting a little smart. Kirk, you're not an AI fearmonger. What are your thoughts on it?
I welcome our robot overlords. I'm excited for it. Often I see these memes talking about how, by 2023, I thought we were going to live in the Jetsons, yet kids are eating Tide Pods and no one knows which bathroom to use. And then whenever we see these new technologies like driverless vehicles or whatever, then everyone wants to shut them down to save a handful of jobs or whatever. But no, I think it's great. And I think a case could be made that the innovation in the tech sector is what has been keeping America afloat for the last few decades.
Sure. As far as the Luddite thing, I'm not a Luddite. The new technology doesn't scare me. It's going to be disruptive economically, but a well-functioning economy is always disrupting. Like, it's innovate. That's part of innovation. Patty, what do you think about AI?
We use artificial intelligence in agriculture. I mean, already, like we use, I'm going to describe GPS. The way that we use GPS in tractors is a form of artificial intelligence. Um, the thing that I'm concerned about with artificial intelligence in agriculture, though, is I am concerned about obviously jobs. I'm specifically concerned about the migrant jobs. So, about I think something like 60% of our current workforce in agriculture is of foreign born. No, I think at least a great deal of them are immigrants. I can't remember the exact number right now, but basically, those people, they're not doing the planting, they're actually doing the harvesting part. And we haven't gotten down artificial intelligence to engage in total harvest. Like I had this one conversation with someone who, and I'm talking about, this is an individual who thinks that because he has a tech degree that he therefore knows everything. So he
kind of like a Riza Aslan type.
yeah, just like him. And so like he argued basically by using the example of strawberries. He asked me if we have harvesting technology that is artificially intelligent strawberries, and I was like, not really. And so he brings me this article of a robot that's harvesting strawberries, and I'm like, you think every farm in the United States is using this technology? Probably not. So we're not there yet. And we probably won't be there for a minute with large scale harvesting, just using robots and artificial intelligence. But if we did, well, what's going to happen to the millions and millions of migrants that come to the United States, spend money in the United States, and help circulate money in the United States while picking our fruits and vegetables? So, and then furthermore, at that point, you get into larger and larger farms, less farms being farms that engage in hand picking because artificial intelligence is more efficient. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have efficient economies or efficient marketplaces and efficient agriculture, but it's a concern. It's a concern of mine because I think that local agriculture needs a place. It should still exist, and like we're definitely still competing against like large agricultural corporations. So
interesting. Like I said, I do believe AI will be disruptive.
yeah.
And I've no doubt that it'll be disruptive in agriculture. Obviously, you know that better than I do. But I don't know. I do not fear the disruption to the extent I think you do. But
Yeah, I and my fear is not even about if it will be efficient. Oh yeah, it's going to be efficient. Like we're not going to have a problem with food. My fear is mostly just like worker based. Like what will happen to those people who are in those positions?
well, that's why we need.
Well, you also got to imagine that the more AI takes off, there will probably be a lot of new opportunities and new jobs that we can't even imagine yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about this with the app. I know it's not like AI, but like this whole Apple Vision Pro was just released. And I just think it's a cool technology. I'm probably not going to be one of the early adopters because it's like $3,500. But I remember like when the iPhone first came out, I sort of had this unnecessarily low view of it in a way at first. I was just like, yeah, it's nice, but the internet is slow and it only has a few apps. And I couldn't really conceive of like, oh no, this is going to create a whole marketplace of apps. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming. Like if you would have like been able to tell me like, oh no, in 10 years, you're going to be able to like tap on your phone and then like something will be at your door, like a groceries will be at your door within 2 hours, or it will create all these jobs where people are using their cars to make extra money. I would have thought that was really cool, but it wasn't really conceivable at the time.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
The thing about these agricultural jobs, they're like, I get it that they're a lifeline for migrant laborers. Those are backbreaking jobs. Like the reason why so many migrant laborers do them is because Americans are not willing to do them for the amount of money that we pay them, which is
correct.
This is usually under the table labor, correct?
Yeah. So we're talking about people who are, as opposed to being on payroll, even if they're part-time, like they are being paid per bushel or per tree that they, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because it's definitely going to change things. But
oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those robots that pick vegetables are going to look pretty cool. So there's at least that.
They do. The strawberry one looked pretty cool, but yeah.
We'll see. Okay. In your opinion, who is the funniest politician ever? So the funniest politician in my lifetime is easily Donald Trump. Like, you might not love him. I don't love him. Didn't vote for him, but he's funny. Like, the guy can clown on people. I'll say that much. As far as like in history, I have no idea. I don't know how funny fucking Abraham Lincoln was or whatever. But Donald Trump is legitimately funny in certain respects. What do you guys think?
I thought Obama had some pretty good comedic chops at times. I
Yeah.
felt like he didn't get enough credit for that. And I remember, I'd have to go back and look, but I remember like during the 90s, everyone said that like Bob Dole was really funny. That like
Bob Dole.
Yeah, I just remember people saying that a lot, and that like he could even make like Bill Clinton laugh. So I don't know.
Bob Dole was totally made fun of on Family Guy
And The Simpsons.
and
Bob
The
Dole.
Simpsons.
Bob Dole. Thanks, Bob Dole. Yeah.
The best was the George H.W. Bush episode where he moved.
Oh,
across
when
the
he moved
street.
across the street. I love how it ends with Gerald Ford moving across the street. And then
I did not know until like a few years ago that the reason why they made that episode was because George H.W. Bush said something in a speech like, we need more families like the Waltons and less families like the Simpsons. And that's why they made fun of him.
that was very funny. But ironically, what's her face? His wife, George H.W. Bush's wife, Barbara Bush.
Barbara, yeah.
She was portrayed as like getting along with Marge and very nice. It's like she was awful in real life. Barbara Bush was, and like, whereas George H.W. Bush was actually a pretty good guy, but he and Homer did not get along. But yeah, when Gerald Ford shows up at the end, he's like, "Homer, do you want to watch football and eat nachos?" That was pretty funny. But
and then when Frank Grimes comes, he's like, we're hanging out with the president. You.
I think the funniest politician to me is, I think Trump is hilarious. I think Jeb Bush is funny. I'm sorry, like nothing will ever. That's the problem. It's unintentional, and nothing will ever beat out "Please clap." Nothing will beat that.
The moments when he's on, I don't remember what the context is, but
he's so depressing.
It was when he was running for president. He was on stage. He was like, "Oh, you're kicking me off the stage. You're kicking me off the stage." Like,
it was actually similar to, I hate to bring this back to the Simpsons episode, but there's like the scene where George Bush is giving a speech. And he's like, any questions? And everyone raises their hands like, already considering that I explained my colorful hair. And then everyone puts their hands down.
Speaking of cartoons, on Family Guy, they pointed out that Jeb Bush's wife looks like Consuela.
Yes.
The Korean lady.
There's another politician I'm thinking of. How could I forget Joe Biden? I think Joe Biden's funny.
He again, mostly unintentionally.
It's unintentional, but the whole like the time where he describes how kids want to be on his leg hairs, and he's like, I learned a lot of things about roaches. What is this man talking about? It's like he'll sit there and just go like, like, what are you saying? What are you doing, sir? Are you having a stroke on stage right now?
Or his adventures with Corn Pop. Those were.
Oh my gosh.
Ironically, Obama's funniest moment was when he was making fun of Trump. What do we call it? It was at the White House Correspondents Center when he was clowning on Donald Trump. That was funny. It probably inspired Donald Trump to run for president.
Yeah.
It was legitimately hilarious.
Obama like actually getting into the whole Key and Peele gag where he has an angry translator. That was probably like the most memorable, like down to earth thing a president, obviously in my lifetime, has ever done.
Obama did have a good sense for that stuff. Like, I remember at one point in time, there was a rumor that he was going to appear in the Entourage movie, which I don't know if you guys ever watched Entourage, but they, towards the end, later seasons, they relied like a ton on cameos, and they got like all these big celebrities in it. And it's like, who's the biggest celebrity in the world? Well, at the time it was Obama. So like, supposedly he was going to be the president cool enough to be in the cool HBO show, but he didn't make that appearance, and it was probably for the best because that show kind of sucked it towards the end there. But okay, here we're about to get real philosophical. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, does it make a sound?
Yes.
Yes. That's I'm going to be very literal with that. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Just because we're not there to experience it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened.
I am not a solipsist, so yeah, there's a reality that it exists independently of me.
Yeah.
Do you think the U.S. would be better off with a multi-party system like they have in Britain? We kind of already answered this. Again, I think we do have a multi-party system, and by multi-party, I mean you mean more than two. You mean past the Republicans and Democrats. We do have more than two parties. They just exist within the big parties.
And I think when people ask these kind of questions, they never really stop to think about like what the party's politics and agenda and ideology would be. I feel like that's an important aspect. And I think it just goes back to something I like to say, that this is mostly about like ideas and the dominant philosophical ideas in the culture. That's probably the more important thing than whether or not we had more political parties or less. It's like, well, if you look at Weimar Germany, they had a bunch of political parties that were this brand of socialism and that brand of socialism. Clearly that wasn't the problem with Weimar Germany. So
Okay, where are we? Favorite video games that you like to play? So right now I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom on Nintendo Switch, and I'm enjoying that. At first, I didn't like it because it was a little too. It was really, 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 really difficult, but now I don't know. I'm getting a kick out of it. Really enjoy it. That's just what I've been playing lately. By the way, I see some people send some super chats. For whatever reason on my StreamYards, my chat is not updating. So I don't know. Do you guys see that $20 super chat? I pulled it up on the stream, but
yeah, from Armani Villafane. Want me to read it?
I can read it. Sorry, I can't bring it up on your screen. For some reason, I'm not getting the chat's not updating on my StreamYards. But you did send it in, and I appreciate it. $20 from Armani Villafane. Shouldn't debate be welcome between scientists and skeptics on issues? I remember Miles Power debunking plenty of conspiracy theories with science, and it helped me understand the truth better. Would love to join and discuss. So we kind of already talked about this, and I'm assuming that's what you're responding to, but I'm not opposed to dialoguing with people who believe in so-called conspiracy theories, or they're skeptical of vaccines or evolution or whatever. I think a live in-person debate is not fruitful necessarily for that. I think, okay, you could say that I'm doing debate in a sense with progressives when I talk about how socialism is ass and capitalism is good. I'm not opposed to having discourse with people you disagree with. I just don't think necessarily that a moderated debate or even like an informal debate on Joe Rogan Experience is necessarily fruitful. If you want to do that, that's fine. But again, by all means, dialogue with anti-vaxxers or creationists or whatever the fuck. Just know that there are limitations of having a formal debate.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical to the idea that those live in-person debates are truly there to just like change people's minds. I recently watched a debate between Inspiring Philosophy, who is a Christian apologetics debater, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but he's basically a Muslim apologetics debater. And the thing that they were debating was child marriage and if it is acceptable for Muhammad to have married like a 9-year-old. What came out of that debate was that Christians and everyone who thinks marrying a 9-year-old is wrong, staying on the same side that they were on, and Muslims or anybody, and I'm not saying all Muslims believe this, but Muslims who do believe that it is okay to marry a 9-year-old, all staying on the same side that they started with. Those debates where people are arguing with each other in real time are not there for people to change their minds. And maybe some people might change their minds. That could happen, but they're not doing that for that purpose. What they're doing is they're there to show off intellectual dominance between each other.
Yeah.
And in order for people to change, in order for people's minds to be changed, right? Changing people's minds is almost like a personal endeavor. It is something that you have to do respectfully and civilly without prying eyes to be there judging you. So because when you change your mind, that's so deeply personal. That's so I don't know the quite good words to describe it, but it seems so deeply personal and vulnerable to change one's mind. You're pretty like weak when you're in the midst of mind changing. So yeah.
In real time, changing your mind in real time seems like it's weak. Like,
Yes.
how many times how is that portrayed on the internet? It's like somebody makes a point and you're like, oh, that's a good point. And it goes, oh, you got destroyed.
Exactly.
Ironically, the person who had probably the best perspective on this was Kyle Kalinske when he said the debates are basically the WWE equivalent of intellectual pursuits. It's about performance. Winning a debate is not the same thing as having a better argument. And there's so many tactics you can use to win a debate that actually are underhanded. They're fallacies. And the fact is, the person who wins the debate, again, we're talking about a formal debate process, not discourse per se, but the person who usually wins the debate is the better rhetorician. And the better rhetorician is not the person who's always right. Kirk, anything?
Yeah. No, I remember that was one of the few times I actually agreed with Mr. Secular Talk, but I think Armani brings up a good point that if you're going to do a debate, I think the focus should be on the audience and trying to educate the audience, not trying to like own or destroy your opponent or educate your opponent, because you're probably not going to change their mind on a debate stage. They're coming to debate their point of view. So the focus should be on hopefully you're changing minds of the viewers or helping the viewers maybe rethink things a little bit.
And unfortunately, there's bad incentives from media here. Like, what's more likely to get more clicks? RFK destroyed on vaccines, or like debating or debunk, or whatever, like carefully analyzing autism vaccine points.
Right.
Some non-clickbaity title is not going to get as much traction, and unfortunately that's a problem with the media, but that's also a problem with us. We're more likely to click on one than we are another. Okay, thank you for your question though. Oh, by the way, what video games do you guys play? Like, Patty, you usually play Elder Scrolls Online, correct?
I do. I actually I pulled up my Steam so I could see all my games. So funny enough, one of the games that I started playing again was Farm Simulator 22.
So when you're not at work, you can pretend to be on a farm digitally.
Exactly. I've been playing Crusader Kings lately, Elder Scrolls Online. There's a game, I think you would probably like it. It's called Humankind. Okay. Humankind is a strategy game where you try to you're basically trying to colonize pieces of land over other players. So you try to reach and put an outpost on pieces of land. Those lands have resource deposits, and then you can start building actual cities and colonies on it to achieve like humankind points, where basically maybe you've discovered an entire continent, or you have built a human marvel, such as like the throne of Zeus or something like that. They use real cultures. So there's like indigenous cultures, Mexican cultures, Spanish and European cultures. Another game I've started playing is The Long Dark. I've had that game for a long time. That's a survival game. I finished both the Mirror's Edge games, which those were like games from a long, long time ago. And then this game will like make people mad. It's called This Land Is My Land. You play as a Native American person who...
You showed me this, yeah.
I did, okay. You play as a Native American person who... And it's a difficult game. Like it's really easy to die on this game. And you're trying to retake land that has been taken and colonized by white men.
White devils, yeah.
The white man. So you play as a Native American person. Obviously, you're specifically killing colonists. I'm just trying to say it in a way that won't sound offensive.
It's gotcha. I'm familiar with the premise of the game. Kirk, what are you playing these days?
Well, I just beat Earthbound last week, which is already one of my favorite video games ever. I've been playing Fitness Boxing Fist of the North Star, more of a workout game. And I don't know if I'm out of shape or if this game is like a legitimate, decent workout. Maybe it's a combination of the two, but it's pretty fun, especially after you get used to it. You just put on a podcast or an audiobook while you do it, and you get a pretty decent workout in.
Dude, boxing is super hard. So no,
yeah.
you're
well,
probably
it's video. I don't know if it counts. It's like video game boxing. You got the switch nunchucks and you're just going hook, uppercut, that. It's just a lot of It's kind of like what was it? Rock Band, but but instead you're just punching and hooking and uppercutting.
No, but I mean, even
ducking.
I've sparred with people before, but even like just going through the motions and hitting a bag or air boxing or not air boxing. What the fuck is the shadow boxing, which is what you're doing in that game.
Yeah,
it's hard as fuck. You're moving your entire body. So what's the name of that game?
Fitness Boxing Fist of the North Star. I guess it's based on, like there was a first fitness boxing and then they took this manga called Fist of the North Star and then just kind of injected that into it. And it's been pretty fun. Another game I came across last night that has my interest is this game called Cassette Beasts. It looks like kind of a knockoff of Pokemon, but with different elements inserted into it. So I'm going to look into that one. And then aside from that, I'm still on Dragon Quest 11, even though I bought that, I think 5 years ago at this point. I still have not completed it. So that's what I've been on.
Earthbound. So I'm assuming you have a SNES Classic.
Yes.
So
no. I have the Switch, but it has I have the Nintendo Online membership where you get all these Super Nintendo games, and that's how I've been playing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I have that, but I also have the SNES Classic, and it's like there's a bunch of games that like Earthbound and what's the other one, Chrono Trigger or whatever. There's a bunch of them that are supposedly great, but it's like, oh, this is gonna take hours of my day, and it's like I'm already doing that. I'm already doing that with Tears of the Kingdom, and I have AAA titles that I just have not started just because I know that they're going to take so much time out of my day. So it's gone.
So Kirk, you're playing a boxing game. Do you box or do you like physical sports in real life?
Yeah, I like physical sports in real life. But I've never boxed, trained, or anything like that. No, not with boxing.
Oh, okay. I asked because I do karate, but that's not boxing. But yeah.
Okay, we got some super chats, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing them on my StreamYards, but I got the stream open so I can see them. So another super chat, $5 from Fat Brown Buffalo. He's got some crazy positions, but Vivek is the sharpest debater in the GOP primary. Do you think he will fare against Trump in the debates? Vivek Ramaswamy, I think that's his last name. He's a gadfly candidate. He's like the Andrew Yang of the GOP. He might get some following, but he's not gonna be president. So as far as I can tell, part of his strategy is basically kissing Trump's ass. But I don't know. Do you guys know anything about him?
He's kind of a mixed bag. There are a lot of things that he says and talks about where I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. Yeah, he especially like he pays a lot of lip service to like American values of, individualism and working hard and hey, you can make something of yourself and that's what we should be focused on. But then I think he gets way too into the culture war stuff, and then especially seeing him talk about foreign policy with Ukraine, he seems to kind of go with the kind of contrarian, like, oh, why are we giving Ukraine all of this money when we should be focusing on our own, like that kind of stuff, and just unimpressive on that front.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't pay any attention to him unless they have the names Harris, Trump, DeSantis, Biden. I don't care. These are people that are essentially inconsequential to the whole thing.
What about Gavin Newsom?
I had this conversation with someone. So funny enough, a friend of mine who's really neurotic, like I have this really neurotic friend who was talking about how he is a strong Democrat. He does not trust Newsom. And the reason why he doesn't trust Newsom is because he was married to
Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Yep. And so he believes that Newsom is he thinks Newsom is basically a psyop, like that Newsom could very easily become a Republicanish like Democrat. The only reason why he is engaged in progressive policies is solely because it matters within the respective state that he's in. But yeah, he, in his opinion, he just totally distrusts him because of his marriage to that woman. So it's so crazy. It's funny, but I don't think that Newsom will receive. I think there's two things I've heard Democrats say. I've heard Democrats say that if Biden were to die, they will pretty much abandon Harris and go for someone like Newsom. The other option was that they want to get rid of Biden and replace Biden with Newsom. I think that both of these options are terrible. I think that they're stupid. The Democrats probably wouldn't do something like that. Biden has the incumbent advantage. He not only has the incumbent advantage, but if Biden were to die, he would become a Democrat martyr, and all Kamala has to do is keep saying Biden would have wanted this, and every Democrat in the United States would stand behind her. So
that's possible. I don't know. I don't think Kamala Harris will ever be elected president. It's possible.
No, I don't think
way
so.
to the White
No,
House.
I don't think that she'll ever be elected president. I think Biden's not going anywhere. I just don't see the Democrats like abandoning Harris. It seems like a strategy that shows like weakness.
Yeah, I think they she's not presidential material, but you're potentially right that like they might rally behind her just because they don't have a better option should something happen to Joe Biden. But for those of you who don't know, Kimberly Guilfoyle, I think that's how you say her last name, she was, I believe, the chief prosecuting attorney in San Francisco when Gavin Newsom was the mayor, and they ended up getting married. And then they got divorced, and she became a Fox News personality. During Trump's presidency, she quit, and she got engaged to Don Jr. So there's a non-zero chance that we will see an election between Gavin Newsom and Don Jr., and it will be the Kimberly Guilfoyle Bowl, because it will be her ex with her current husband, which will be interesting.
Are these people not embarrassed? When are they like ever embarrassed?
I have no idea. But yeah, my dad met Gavin Newsom once, but he was out west for some conference for like nonprofits or something like that. And I was like, "Did you meet his wife?" He's like, "God, no." Because apparently their marriage was on the rocks for a while before they split up. But okay. $10 super chat from Drewski. Thank you very much, Drewski. Do you guys have opinions on 15-minute cities? Lots of conservatives were fear-mongering what are just more compact, walkable cities. So I don't know specifically what that is. And it's a shame that Kenny's not here because I bet he does. But do you have any idea what that is, Kirk?
I don't, but I just put up a video a few weeks ago where I was like making fun of a lot of those like walkable city YouTube channels that talk about how evil cars are and all of that stuff. Look, I'm all in favor of private property rights. And from what I can tell, a lot of problems in big cities, especially in blue cities and blue states, is that they have long abandoned private property rights. And if they respected private property rights, if they embraced fossil fuels and whatnot, things would be a lot better.
You know, I don't know. I get it. I get some of the rhetoric about how cars ruin cities, like putting a big fucking highway in the middle. I see pictures of Milwaukee before the highway system and after. It's like, that's kind of lame. Like that big ugly highway takes up a lot of space. Thank you, Dwight Eisenhower. But I don't know. It's kind of like that ship has sailed. Cars are too integral to our culture. Like, I'm not opposed to walkable cities or whatever. Not even necessarily opposed to public transportation on a local level. If a city wants to do that, then okay.
And look, yeah, if someone wants to build a subway or a train, go ahead. You can do it with your own money and your own private property. Let's go. Let's see what you can do.
Yes, I agree. I mean, zoning is a whole interesting topic in its own right, and there are lots of different perspectives on it but it's just not something that I've gotten in the weeds on. But it's definitely a topic that I'm willing to look into. Since I'm moving back to Milwaukee, I've been paying a lot of attention to Milwaukee-based journalists. And like a lot of them are heavy on that because Milwaukee's downtown is like half of it's just parking lots. Like, and I feel like that we could better utilize that space. But hey, Patty, you got any thoughts? You're more of a rural person, aren't you?
I have like this love-hate relationship between the city and even a love-hate relationship with the rural. If I'm in the city, I still want to be on a place that has access to land. Like if I could find if I could find where I am now, or no matter what state that I was going to stay in for the rest of my life, like it could be in the city, but I still want my 5 or 10 acres and I still want to do what I want on it. Which is totally possible. Like dreams can happen. There are still places out there that are in the middle of cities that are 5 or 10 acres. They may cost a lot, but they're there. The problem with rural living is simply that, like, as a woman and as like a single woman, I am still like alone. I think my mom has always like held this concern about like, my daughter is a farmer. There's a chance she might be out in the sticks. How's she going to protect herself?
Mm-hmm.
That's a legitimate concern, right? Because so I don't really care where I am as long as I get to be on land. I get to be on a nice access to land and I can farm.
Well, you live in Michigan, not
Yes.
too far from Detroit. So if you had like $100,000, you could probably buy a good 10 acres worth of houses.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I could. I
You could buy the whole city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. No, now you guys are dogging on Detroit. No, I'm kidding.
There are so many abandoned lots in Detroit. Like why don't people do that? Like they should buy that land and do what they want with it.
Well, so the problem is that the city that I live in now, I live in Metro Detroit. Obviously, I'm not going to say the name of the city that I'm in, but because Detroit and Metro Detroit want to be portrayed no longer as poverty-ridden, burned out house cities, they are abandoning like country and rural roots. They want to very deeply be portrayed as so clean and pearly white that they build ugly architecture. They build business upon business, but they're not willing to let individuals establish something that has more of like a natural flair to it. One of my biggest complaints about the city that I'm in right now is the fact that this city is not, this is going to sound so weird. This city is not like environmentally minded. And when I say that, I mean that they're too busy trying to look at aesthetics. They're not willing to experiment with like wildflowers. They're not willing to experiment with ways of beautifying the place in like a holistic manner. And so, and this is like why, for example, many people who live in cities have like such high rates of allergies, because, well, aesthetically pleasing trees that don't produce fruit are male. They're male trees. And so they just produce pollen. So you have pollen all over the air. Everybody's got horrific allergy issues within these cities because they're being overloaded with this allergen. And somehow the city council just can't figure out why it's happening, even though every botanist in the fucking world has. So I wish that the city, if I bought, there is land. If I tried to buy land and I tried to engage in agricultural practices, I would have the city all over my ass. Like that, that's a big problem for me. They're not willing to let people be self-sustainable. People have issues with you buying chickens. The law in my city is that if you want to own chickens, they have to be 150 feet away from any residence. Who has that space? Nobody.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
I'll just say this in general. I believe planning is, or, top-down planning is folly, in that people will do good things with freedom. So let them build. Let people build what they want. Within reason, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And well, I just had an issue happen where I had been in communication with the city about a piece of land that hadn't been used since, I kid you not, it had never been developed ever within the history of the city that I'm in. And I asked about it. I called multiple times about it. I was told that it was not for sale. It was under the city revitalization, and they were not interested in selling it. Well, about a month or two later, there was a house on there. No, not a month, about 6 months later, there was a house built on there. This house cost $600,000. And I called them and I said, I was told that this land was not available. What happened? And they hung up on me. They didn't care to explain it.
Jeez.
It was horrible.
Wow. Okay, well,
I guess Bradley Beal got traded to the Suns.
really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. I had no idea. The Suns trying to get back to that those NBA finals. Okay, Dan, $5 super chat. Thank you. Steve, I would like to sincerely apologize for calling you the love child of Kyle Kalinske and Alex Jones. I appreciate your apology. Apology accepted. When will the new vids come out? July. That's the plan. So I got asked a bunch of questions like, hey, you were uploading a lot and now you're not uploading anymore. When are you going to upload again? I know I told you this, Patty. I think I've said things to you, Kirk, but my ideal upload amount would be 3 videos a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and like one stream a week too. But this isn't my job, and like it's sort of something I do when I enjoy it, and when I'm not feeling it, I just don't upload for a while. And part of me really wants to get it on a consistent upload schedule, but I have these very silly self-imposed ideas that like a video for me is supposed to be like 12 to 15 minutes long. And so I'm uncomfortable releasing short videos. I don't know why, but that's just, I'm going to try getting over that and just get on a consistent upload schedule because I think that will be fruitful. But again, getting big on YouTube and getting tons of views isn't necessarily a priority for me. But I understand that lots of people like my videos, and I want to, obviously, I want to help out the people who have been so helpful to me. But I don't know, Kirk, you're an intermittent uploader too. You don't upload all the time every day. You're probably more consistent than I am. But what are your thoughts on uploading?
I try to put up at least one video on YouTube once a week. I saw a comment earlier saying that I hadn't uploaded in a long time. I'm like, I upload every week. And then I try to do 3 streams each week too. 3 2-hour Twitch streams.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just don't want to get in the point of uploading shit. Like there's a tons and tons of YouTubers who read half an article and give you some vanilla talking points and whoop, that's a video. I just don't want to be someone who turns out videos just for the sake of doing it. I want them to be videos that I genuinely swear by. Patty, are you going to get back into consistent uploading?
I'm trying. So my problem is 2 things. My daughters. I have 2 gorgeous little girls, and I also have a job working in agriculture, so I don't have a lot of time throughout the day. And the other thing is that I'm camera shy, so, and that's funny for me to say, considering that like I started out on YouTube being loud and big mouth, but that was, honest to God, probably me like just trying to get over being camera shy. So part of the problem is that I feel really awkward under the camera. I'm a shy person in general, so I've been trying to like, I have to psych myself up to do every video. That's like a lot of emotional labor just to, share information that I care about. So I have ideas about things that I want to do. I've uploaded a couple videos. My issue is just being consistent and just kind of getting over the shyness that I have, and plus my time.
Sure. Yeah, one of my hangups, I'm not shy. I'm pretty gregarious in person. One of my issues is just I can't help but look at the feedback. And don't get me wrong, most of the feedback is positive, or like, and even a lot of the criticisms of the feedback are like measured and well thought out. But man, you do get some herpaderp on the comments, and it's that drives me up a wall. And it's like that is mental exhaustion that I really don't need to put myself under.
Well, see, that was like the other thing. Like if I went to, now I've been on other people's channels, like just recently, I engaged with a guy named Garland Farms. I was on his live stream, obviously not on camera because no, but people were nice, right? Mm-hmm. But what if I was having a debate with him about agriculture? Yeah. Then I would have a bunch of literal fuckheads coming onto my channel telling me about how wrong they think that I am compared to a veteran in agriculture. Now, Garland's very nice. I didn't argue with him, but What if I did? That's just
Right.
that's a lot. Like I had to deal with that when I debated Destiny about him calling me a fucking name. Like why would I want to go through that again?
What did you debate Destiny about? I remember it happening, but
Yeah, so Destiny called me a slur. He called me
okay.
Uncle Tom,
Oh,
and he demanded I come onto his channel to explain to him why I was not a slur. And so I did, and he ended up apologizing during that stream. But when he did it, like you can read the comment section, like it's brutal. Like it's just people talking about how annoying that they think I am, which I don't give a fuck if you think I'm annoying. I just I at the time I just said what I feel. And so I had people coming onto my channel just being absolutely horrible. And it was the same thing when I debated like this extremist vegan. I had people trying to dox me, trying to dox my farm. And some of them sent death threats towards my kids. It's just too much.
You're just afraid of defending your ideas in public.
Well, see, yeah. I mean, the thing is like if someone riles me up enough, I can and I'll do it, but it's just a lot. I'm too old for that.
Well, also you're extremely jealous of Candace Owens, and we don't want to deal with that. So
I'm totally making a stank face right now.
But as far as Destiny goes, a lot of my fans are Destiny fans, which isn't too crazy, but it's like I get these comments like, "Oh, when are you going to collab with Destiny?" It's like, dude, talk to him. I'm not the one who needs to be persuaded.
Well,
like
Destiny's calmed down a lot over the years. Like he's not even remotely what he was back then.
He was a big flamethrower back in the day. I mean, he still kind of is, but he oh god, what? It was a video I made on free trade. And somebody's like, I would love to see you debate Kyle or Destiny on this. It's like,
but Destiny believes
Destiny agrees with me on this.
I was about to say, like, he's probably one of the most pro-capitalist leftists on YouTube.
Right. So much for that. But all right, Armani Villafane again, $5 super chat. Thank you, Armani. Boxing is the second best method of fighting. Start by mastering the jab and you're on your way to whooping ass. This is true. So Joe Rogan has talked about the best methods of fighting, and he said Brazilian jiu-jitsu was the second and wrestling is the first. Now, I used to wrestle in high school, so I'm rusty, but apparently I have the best fighting method according to Joe Rogan.
I'm gonna have to disagree with Joe Rogan.
I do know how to box. I'm not great at it, but apparently I am on my way to becoming a great fighter. But Kirk, you ever do like martial arts or anything like that?
No, and I want to clarify, the only reason why I got the fitness boxing game was because my doctor told me that I needed a little more cardio, and I thought that might do the trick, and it might be fun, which I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm getting a pretty decent workout. So I'm not a fighting guru or expert by any means. I want to...
Does it like correct you on your form or anything like that? Is it like a boxing instructor in any way, or is it just kind of like do this and you'll
it's just, I've noticed with the game, like the action detection is kind of flawed. I do try to like follow through on like every punch and hook and uppercut to the best of my abilities, but like if you just like go like this over and over, like it will count that as like an uppercut or a hook. I've noticed that.
Okay, motion control is not great on the Switch. But I'm guessing it just takes you through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe they incorporate dips in it. I don't know, but
yeah, they have dips and and ducks and that kind of stuff too. So
because I'm interested, I haven't boxed in a while, but like it is a great workout, and I would love to get back into it. And I don't know,
I've thought about going to a gym and then like seeing what training is like, just for the exercise though, not to like get into fighting. Or whatever.
It's like, God, every year they have an alumni rugby game where I live because I went to college where I currently live. And it's like, they're like, oh, dude, you're going to suit up? You're going to play? Because I played rugby in high school and college. And it's like, I don't want to get a fucking concussion or like, break my ankle or something. I'm too old for that shit. Like, I wake up with a sore back. Like, I don't have time to fucking compete athletically. Okay.
Yeah.
$10 super chat from Frank Hurley. Thank you, Frank. And then there's a one with balloons. I don't know. Maybe that's a super sticker. Let's see here. Anyone read How Asia Works by Joe Studwell? Apparently, it makes a very persuasive case that the success of the East Asian countries was due to effective industrial policy. I have not read that book, but I'm very much familiar with the argument. I would have to hear what policy
within those countries, or U.S. industrial policy?
Industrial policy within those countries, like the East Asian tigers. So South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, those countries that really took off in the 80s or the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
I did learn, I was researching cars for a video a few weeks ago, and I was looking into like, I'm going to compare South Korea with North Korea. And I found out that like the South Korean, when it came to the automobile industry, they were like highly protective of the South Korean automobile companies.
Same with Japanese automakers, but it's like, and look, Japanese automakers make very good cars that are great exports for the country. And you know, like a lot of them are made here now just because there's such a market for them. I am skeptical of industrial policy, even if they're done well, which apparently they were there, but I don't know. I would have to look into it more. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer, but obviously those are, you know, they do industrial policy, but don't get me wrong. These are capitalist countries for the most part. They largely have free economies. And I think that you can make an equally persuasive case that being a liberal economy open up, or that there are examples of how having an open economy is a good thing. So, but obviously there are lots of fans of industrial policy. Well, okay, so there are people who are big fans of industrial policy here in theory. And then when you get to the nuts and the bolts, they're like, wait, you're just writing checks to these corporations. It's like, well, yeah, that's what industrial policy is, you fucking dickhead. Like, what did you think it was? It's corporate welfare. But hey, whatever. Okay, now back to the YouTube questions. What is your opinion on Governor Ron DeSantis? Excuse me. So I was asked this in a previous stream, and basically my answer was that guy's not going to be president. I still don't think he will be president. I think Donald Trump will beat him soundly in the primary. As far as his governorship, I haven't paid that close attention to it. I know what I hear, and it's like, oh, he's destroying Florida, or like he's a great governor of Florida, and I just haven't been bothered to look into the weeds. But I know Florida has done a lot of good things that people like, and they're kind of not great on the LGBT stuff. But honestly, I couldn't give you a great answer past that he's not going to be president. So really, he's just Florida's problem at this point, or Florida's good part. What do you guys know about Ron?
I would say that my opinion of him kind of peaked around early 2021 with the way he was willing to kind of stand up in the face of like COVID lockdowns and political pressure and media pressure. And and then like even reading his book and seeing like how he thought through the process kind of made sense. I think he gets credit for that. But ever since, my opinion of him has only declined since.
Yeah. So I have a continuously declining opinion of Ron DeSantis. He's played into a lot of the same populist social justice positions that a lot of Republicans and their constituents are picking up. His banning of things like diversity, equity without him. My problem with stuff like that is that if someone doesn't like diversity, equity, or they don't like African American studies, I need them to explain to me what they believe that to be in a coherent manner. If they can't explain that to me in a coherent manner and why they disagree with it, that doesn't involve something stupid like it teaches people to hate white people or to be victims, then to me, they don't have an actual grasp on the thing that they're banning. And I think that when people ban anything, they have to be able to explain coherently why they feel that it needs to be banned and rid of from society. So he's legitimized the social justice nonsense that many Republicans are freaking out about. And it's for his presidency. It's for him to gain the trust of other Republican constituents, but it hurts and disrupts actual people's lives. So
I will say he is a little too culture war, a little too online for my liking. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I would vote for him over Trump easily. In
Definitely.
The Republican primary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that he's running for president because I think anyone is better than Trump.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the way he's been like leaning into culture war issues, and his fight with Disney's really turned me off. So
yeah, that's weird.
and he's
That's coming
someone that
off
I wanted to
childish.
like. I'm not like I'm not like
Yeah.
trying to find like nitpicks of like and reasons to dislike him. Like as someone that like at one point I was like, oh, maybe this might be an improvement if the Republican Party can turn to him instead of and move away from Trump.
Yeah.
And from what I could tell, he just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I would love to be wrong, and for him to be the GOP nominee, because I could definitely see myself voting for him over Jibber Jabber and Joe. But it's you know, I just don't have high hopes for his future political career. He's not very good at running for president, and that's a huge part of it. And Donald Trump is that like
and now he's kind of leaning into like the anti-vax stuff to go after Trump, which I find bizarre.
That's no good, because Donald Trump did Operation Warp Speed, and now vaccines are bad. So we got to get
which
him
I
on
think
that.
is one of the better achievements of his presidency, if I'm being honest.
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
Okay, will the GOP get off the populist train and return to fiscal responsibility and sound foreign policy during the 2020s? Return to those things they would have had to have been at those things at some point. So, no, unfortunately, you know, they're not going to balance the budget, and I don't know how that budget's going to get balanced at any point, if it will. But there's really no political appetite for actually being fiscally disciplined, which is why no political party embraces it. So, could they have a better foreign policy? I hope so. They have had better foreign policies in the past. I know Ronald Reagan is kind of a cliche at this point, but he really did prosecute the Cold War in an effective way. And don't get me wrong, he did do some bad things. But when somebody asked him, hey, what's your goal for being president? He said, end the Cold War. And I think he took really meaningful steps in doing that. Will we get a modern version of that? I hope so, but I'm not optimistic. Obviously, we're not fighting the Cold War against the Soviet Union now, but I think like we could have a better foreign policy against China and Russia and such, but we'll see. I'm not optimistic. I think I do think Ron DeSantis would definitely be better than Trump on foreign policy, but I think a lot of other people would be too. We'll see. But what do you guys think?
It seems like during the Tea Party years, a lot of conservatives and Republicans were starting to move in the direction of like free markets and fiscal policy. And I think Trump just kind of blew all of that up. You could say it maybe had some impact at the state level in some states or the local level with some Republicans. But yeah, I think really ever since Trump took over the Republican Party, even Rush Limbaugh at one point said that like, oh, well, we never really cared about it. Republicans never really cared about like the national debt or the deficit. So
yeah, the thing about the Tea Party movement is, like you said, on a local and state level, I think it probably did have some impact, but on a national level, it was mostly just rhetoric, and that they never really embraced that because they never really believed in that stuff.
I guess to be fair, they did they did bring Obama back to some sensibility when they had during his second term. But yeah, ever since then, it's just been downhill.
Right. Patty, any thoughts?
No, I think you guys covered it. If I had to choose between Trump or DeSantis, I would 100% pick DeSantis. I'm not happy with his culture war stuff that he and the rest of the Republicans are picking up, but that's something that it'll probably calm down like in his presidency years, because that's something I don't think he would even try. I think what would probably be pretty likely to happen is the thing that typically happens anyway, is that if we have a Republican in office, either the House or the Senate ends up being wholly controlled by Democrats. So there is a way to just kind of like, if there is culture war policy, there's a way to kind of slow that policy out.
What we need is for George W. Bush to call all the Republican candidates before Super Tuesday, except for Ron DeSantis, and have them drop out so that Ron can rig the primary against Donald Trump. And because that's rigging it, as far as from what I've heard, you are entitled to a split field if you're a candidate.
Look, I have an even more reactionary take. What we need is to put George Bush back in office.
That's not allowed. He served 2 terms, but
I know, but
there's George P. Bush, his nephew, who
George P. Bush.
Jeb's,
okay.
Jeb's son.
That's funny because I have an actual pea bush in my backyard. It has pea pods on it.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
I had no idea peas grew on a bush, but you learned
They,
something new every day.
yeah, they grow like a vine. Okay, I'm about to geek out. Don't let me geek out about plants.
All right, this is by far the best question I got, and there is a definitive answer to this. So, which is best, waffles, pancakes, or French toast? So
Oh.
the definitive order is French toast first, pancakes second, waffles third. Though all of them are good. So,
All of them are great.
Yeah, how do you guys rank those?
Kirk, you go first.
I actually do not like French toast. And
What the fuck is wrong with you? You're blocked.
Well, excuse me, princess.
I'd go pancakes first, then waffles, and then throw the French toast into the garbage.
No.
Or order more pancakes.
No.
Yeah. Order a side of bacon.
Mine is French toast, waffles, and then pancakes. And it has to have either bacon or sausages next to it.
Obviously, yeah. Especially if you get the sausage links, dip it in maple
gosh.
syrup. Mm.
Yes.
My stepmom last time I was home made stuffed French toast. I know I sent pictures to you, Patty, but
Yeah.
oh, it was so good. But I didn't even. It doesn't even need to be stuffed French toast. It can just be regular
I
French
think you
toast.
sent me the recipe too. When the kids come back, I'm gonna make it.
It is. But yeah, those are again all are good. So I will not begrudge you what your choices are.
Apparently, that's a hot take. People don't like my French toast hot takes.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a stupid position, Kirk. Yeah,
I like American toast.
Fair enough.
I have a bunch of food takes that are absolutely, apparently to some people, not appropriate. So,
did we rename French toast after Iraq? Because remember French fries were freedom fries very briefly. Did we call it freedom toast? I don't remember.
Who called them freedom fries?
That was
a year.
They were trying to make that a thing, and it just never landed.
But what year?
This was 2003 after we invaded Iraq.
Okay, I was like, how old in 2003?
I was 14 when we went to war with Iraq, and
I was born. Sorry,
the French were like, "Sacre bleu, don't do that," and so people got pissed off and renamed shit. But it never really took off. And then sauerkraut was Liberty cabbage. That was during World War. I think that was during World War I, actually. But
wow.
Okay. Do you call drinking fountains bubblers? I honestly can't remember. I swear I called it water fountain, drinking fountain, or bubbler. Like I swear I used all three when I was in elementary school, but I cannot remember it for the life of me.
I've never heard of bubbler ever.
Is that like for like those machines where you have like the jug on top?
No, that's a water cooler.
That's a cooler.
It's like when you're at school, we had these machines. You press the handles, and water would come out of the spout, and you'd put your mouth to it, and you'd suck it up.
Yeah, it's a water fountain.
Yeah, water fountain. But I swear we called them bubblers too, but I can't remember. Maybe I was just posed with this question at an early age, so I use them all interchangeably. It's entirely possible. But
see, any bubbly drink is called pop.
No, it's called soda. Pop is a noise.
It's pop.
Soda.
It's cola.
I have a weird rule with pop. Pop is a noise. Unless you were talking about a generic brand that is a fruit drink, I will allow you to call it pop. So if you're like, come at me with some great value fruit punch, I'll be like, oh, that's pop. But also soft drink is also acceptable for generic brands. But if you're talking about Coke, that's a soda. If you're talking about Pepsi, that's a soda. Dr. Pepper, that's a soda.
Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Verner's, those are all pops.
Yeah, what does that say, Kirk? Orange soda. So there you go.
Yeah, orange soda is also a pop.
I don't know. I'm not going to litigate this. Okay. Justin, 199 super chat. Have we reached peak woke? By the way, when you mentioned people not being able to define those terms, Patty, I thought of Stephanie Mendel's appearance on Rising with Brianna Joy Gray when Brianna
Wait,
Joy
which
Gray.
terms?
Oh, ESG. And what was the other one? Black, something or another. Stephanie Mendel appeared on Rising with Brianna Joy Gray. And Stephanie Mendel had written a book about wokeness being bad. And Brianna Joy Gray was like, can you define, this was not a gotcha question at all, but she's like, can you define wokeness for us just so we're on the same page? And Stephanie Mendel, despite writing a book on wokeness, could not provide an answer. And it's just like I get it. We all freeze up. We all have our moments, but it's like, you wrote a book about this and you are here to pitch the book. That should be the first thing on your mind. As far as have we reached peak woke? I don't know. I mean, I guess we would have to define woke. If woke is just political correctness, then possibly. I mean, like, I know, look, this whole like Bud Light boycotts and Target boycott and that stuff, I don't think it's going to stick around too much, but has it had a big enough impact that we won't see Pride Month celebrated nearly as enthusiastically next month? I don't know. That's hard to say. The thing is, this stuff comes in cycles. Like, corporations care about this stuff and then they don't. It's just like the Christmas stuff. They would say Merry Christmas and then they wouldn't. And then they'd say Happy Holidays and then they wouldn't. So I don't think we've peaked. It'll just be cyclical. We may have peaked for the foreseeable future, but it'll be different in 5 years. So that's my answer. What do you guys think?
I think I'm starting to think that we have, but it is kind of hard to tell. I mean, maybe we've peaked, but is it going to decline? I think is the question, because I do think a lot of people are starting to kind of sense that, like, okay, this isn't cool. And yeah, like people are just over like cancel culture and constantly bringing politics into everything. I think a lot of people are kind of over this and are bored with it, or maybe I'm just projecting my feelings on everything. So who knows?
I hope you're right. I would be very happy if politics didn't infect everything in American life.
So I'm what's referred to, I'm just making this word up. It doesn't actually exist, but I'm like a woke skeptic. I don't understand what it means to be woke. When people say, I've noticed that people use woke as a moniker for everything that they don't like. So, for example, if someone is discussing something like, for example, Juneteenth is tomorrow, and many people, I think because people have a very myopic view, they are not accustomed to looking at things in like this broad sense. They see a tree, but they don't actually see the entire forest. In this case, they are not aware like the entirety of history. They think history only happened 5-10 years ago. Many people don't know like that Juneteenth had been recognized by the Texas government since before 2000. And so when people say, well, Juneteenth doesn't exist, it's just wokeness that other people have recognized it. What does that mean? What does it mean for it to be wokeness that people have recognized it? It just sounds like you heard something about a minority group and you feel that it is an attack upon your own character. So,
And it was like, it's vaguely identifiable, or it's vaguely political. It's vaguely identity politics is what I mean, because, it's about Black people. So it must be woke. But it's like, we made Juneteenth a federal holiday. Most Republicans voted for it. And it is something worth celebrating. It's like, when we ended slavery, that's a good thing. Like, but that kind of gets thrown in with the woke stuff. And it doesn't help that progressives, like TYT, use it as a means of like, we need to do policies X, Y, and Z because the project of Reconstruction hasn't been completed. So,
well, see, and that's like the other thing that was mentioned about like, cancel culture. I can identify that cancel culture is a form of what woke actually means or is, in a sense, because cancel culture is the belief that people should adhere to the certain standard. And if they fucked up before they even knew that something was offensive, such as like saying the N-word when they were 5th graders, what you're doing is your cancel culture is just overly woke. You are way too obsessed. You're way too into this wrong or this perceived wrong that someone engaged in, but you're not. In this case, you're not even seeing the forest. You're just seeing the tree. So yeah, I wish people would define woke in a better way,
Yeah.
or not say it anymore.
Well, that's the thing, and I hate to beat the dead horse that you guys have already been beating, but it's just like, yeah, the term has just become meaningless. It's just kind of like a catch-all, like whatever conservatives don't like. That's kind of when I think there was a good time to define it. I think the time to I don't know when the time to define it was, but it was like it should have just been defined as left-wing identity politics, and that way you could have laser focused. But of course, I think a lot of people have just expanded the definition to to include like anything that might be perceived as politically correct or anything that the left likes. Like I think I mean there's probably memes that kind of lump supporting Ukraine or supporting vaccines as being woke or whatever. So
well, and let's be real here. One of the things that's going to keep it from going away is the fact that there is an industry propped up by getting outraged by it.
Yeah.
There are right wingers who are looking for every little thing to get pissed off about because they know it's going to generate clicks. So anything vaguely woke is just going to get extrapolated as woke by certain people. Certain people don't want to win it. They just want to continue to be outraged by it. Another question. Is Kyle Kalinske the Tim Pool of the left? My knee-jerk reaction is no. I think they're different animals entirely.
Yeah.
Tim Pool he's like, that he's a disaffected liberal who now just spends all of his time validating conservative talking points. Let's be real. Like, I get that on paper, if you look at all of his views, he's not a right winger, but whose sensibilities is constantly pandering to? Conservatives. Like,
is Tim Pool kind of like Joe Rogan in the sense of like sometimes I'll see him talk with people and he kind of like changes depending on who he's talking to?
He does do that. He's kind of milquetoast like that, but I mean, there are a lot of good video essays on Tim Pool actually, and he very cleverly validates certain conservative talking points without explicitly doing it. I think Tim Pool's game is plausible deniability. Whereas I think Kyle, for as much as I criticize him, is a lot more genuine. Like the stuff he believes is absolutely fucking retarded, but don't get me wrong, he genuinely believes it. Whereas Tim Pool is a lot harder to read. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I think Lance from the Surfs, of all people, had a good point when he's like, Tim, if somebody who didn't know anything about you, didn't know anything about politics, except for what right wing and left wing were, looked at your channel and watched it, how would they define you politically? And they would define him as conservative. Like, and again, I get that if he takes one of the political compass tests, it's going to show him left of center or whatever, but what does he prioritize? What does he validate? Whose sensibility is he pandering to? I believe it's conservatives. And I think there's a difference. I think Kyle is genuine. Don't get me wrong. I probably agree with Tim on more stuff, but, and I think Tim is smarter than Kyle, but Kyle is, no, they're not the same. Any thoughts?
Kyle is an intellectual lightweight.
This is true.
And
he's a policy wonk.
He is, yeah. I mean, and to be honest, it's kind of embarrassing if you have to say something like Tim Pool is smarter than you. That's embarrassing. So
is Kyle underrated in a way? Because we do got to keep in mind that he did help start Justice Democrats, which definitely opened the door for people like AOC and Ilhan Omar to get into Congress. I don't know if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is in Congress right now without Kyle Kalinske.
You know what's funny about that is I think that's probably his crowning achievement, is starting the Justice Democrats, which, don't get me wrong, that has had a real tangible effect on politics. The thing is, by his measure, that failed because they were supposed to be way different. They were supposed to be super progressive and they were supposed to push them left and da-da-da-da. It's like, dude, what you did was pretty impressive on paper. It's like, it goes to show that he has very different ideas about what's realistic and what's possible within the American political system. So that, getting this caucus started in the Democrats and is not an accomplishment because they're not as pure as he wants them to be. But yeah, he, again, I think that's pretty impressive, even though these are politicians I completely disagree with. I've talked about this before, but I think the idea that he's a policy wonk is, I mean, it's comical on his face, but it's like, it's basically impossible to be an informed voter. It really is. Like all the issues that are taken care of by politicians, the idea that you're going to be on top of that and be able to evaluate them based on their performance is simply something you cannot do. So a lot of people go for substitutes for that. And one of the substitutes is Kyle Kalinskiism, which is a very superficial understanding of a lot of things. And so I think he's the symptom of a much larger problem, which is political ignorance and rational ignorance. But that's a whole different video in its own right. Do you think?
I agree. They are different animals in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I really don't view them as analogous. I mean, Tim even claims to be a journalist, which Kyle doesn't do anymore. At one point, he said he was a journalist, but in they're equally, their journalist credentials are equal in that they read articles written by other people. If that makes you a journalist, then I'm a journalist, I guess. Do you think stuff will pop off between Israel and Iran anytime soon? I certainly hope not, is my answer. I got another question about the Iran nuclear deal, and I wish I could give you a better answer on how effective that is. Or how effective it was. Obviously, we pulled out of it, but it is desirable not to see Iran, or to see Iran not get nuclear weapons. That is something we would not want. Again, I don't know how effective the GCPOA was at implementing that, but here's the thing. The thing that Obama should have learned, or that Biden should learn from Obama, is that you should get an actual treaty passed. Because if you're just going to do it essentially by executive order, which is how we did it, which it was an accord. It's like the next president can just pull out of that accord on a whim, which is what Trump did. And so it's like, if you want a lasting deal, you actually have to negotiate a treaty. So those are my thoughts in general. Sorry, that's not great. But no, I don't want a war between Israel and Iran. And I do not want to see Iran get the nukes. So,
and I think that's even more reason to keep them from getting nuclear weapons, because I do fear that if they were able to develop that technology, they would probably they might. I imagine they would probably attack Israel first. The Ayatollah of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, I think that's how you say it. He's been on Twitter talking about like how Israel like should not exist at all. So I definitely don't want that monster with atomic bombs on his hands. So.
Right. And what's more realistic is that Israel would do a first strike.
Oh, yeah.
Not, I mean, Israel has nukes. So I'm not even saying they would bomb Iran, but they would attack Iran if they thought they were going to get nukes. So, yeah, we don't want to see that happen. Patty, you got anything?
I agree with you both again. I don't know what you guys' feelings on Israel are. I'm myself am pro-Israel. I live in an Orthodox Jewish community. Like almost all of my neighbors are Orthodox Jewish. In my opinion, the leadership of Iran has an ideological position that's not just against the existence of Israel, but they have an ideological position about Jewish people, about the existence of Jewish people. And so I hold the belief that Israel, being in my opinion, the home of the Jews, the home of Christians, and the home of Muslims, it needs to be a safe place for Jewish people. And if it's not a safe place for Jewish people, then, I mean, we're talking about, really lovely people. I just visited my neighbors today to go send them all bushels of kale because I had extra kale that I was growing in my garden, and they're all really wonderful, beautiful people. So, it's an emotional position that I have, probably even a little bit religious position that I have, but I don't want Iran anywhere near nukes, or any country that has a position against Jewish people and are around Israel anywhere near nukes.
Yeah. I grew up in go on, Kirk.
Oh, well, we're talking about Israel. So you could say is maybe a flawed, imperfect country that still has a great degree of respect for individual rights, whereas Iran is a barbaric theocracy. So in the conflict between the two, it's a no-brainer for me.
And I grew up in an area with a lot of Jewish people too, and obviously there are bad Jews. Nobody's saying that there aren't, but they make very good neighbors by and large. And as far as like the people go, like Israel's an ethno state, it's like it's a refuge state because people tried to exterminate them, so they needed their own states to be safe. And obviously there are non-Jews who live in Israel too, Arabs. But
yeah, it's wholly ironic when people say things like Israel's an ethno state and they come from states in which specifically persecute Jews if they live in their state. So,
right. Who do you think will win the GOP primary and why? We kind of already answered this, but it's going to be Donald Trump. And
yeah.
it's because he has a cult following that's large enough to win in a split field. And he has a name recognition. And generally, Republican primary voters view his presidency as popular. And while not all of them, and while some of them certainly admit he has flaws, they think that his upside outweighs those flaws. So I just think he's got the most support. So go on.
So I've been under the same mindset, but these recent allegations, these recent cases, the indictment, like reading that and seeing a lot of people. I know like Twitter isn't real life, but that was kind of the first time I was thinking maybe there's a chance he's not the nominee, especially once we see what comes out of Georgia. If he gets bogged down with these cases, I think it is possible that he might lose a lot of respect, whether amongst the voting base. The more like people who like only went along with Trump, they never really liked him, but they just thought he was preferable to the Democrats. That might sour them. Like all of these indictments might sour them on Trump. But I'm not sure if it would be enough to prevent him from being the nominee, unfortunately.
I don't think it hurts him in the nomination process. It might hurt him in the general, but we'll see. Okay. Let's see here. Do you think dark horse candidates will steal the nomination from Trump and DeSantis? If so, who? We already answered that. Hypocrisy aside, on a scale from 1 to 10, how serious do you believe the newest indictment against Trump is? God, I have no. I'd be very surprised if he saw prison time, just because I can't imagine us sending one of our former presidents. Or by the time they do it, he might be president again. Who knows? I can't imagine him going to prison. So. The ramifications will only be political as far as I know. And like I said a minute ago, I don't think it will hurt him in the nomination process. It might hurt him in the general, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, he's at, I mean, if I were to put it in scale to 1 to 10, he's at a 6 or 7 for me. He has like really serious charges. Like at this point, you might as well just slap like sedition on there. Essentially, like he has extremely serious charges. I think he's probably going to be found guilty on a couple of them. I don't know if he'll serve time. Like that's really, really hard to imagine a former president serving time in prison. But I mean, like he's at a 6 or 7, so I don't know. I'm no lawyer, just a farmer.
We'll see. I hate to punt on the question, but time will tell.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. I'm going to go to Twitter because we're almost at 2.5 hours here, and some of the YouTube questions were just too long. So going to knock some Twitter ones out, and then we'll probably call it a night before too long, if that's okay with you guys.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
It's still daytime here in California.
In sunny California. It's nice and bright by Kirk. It's been raining all day here, which
I
is
am
fun.
amused that when Gavin Newsom came up, no one asked me what my thoughts were, even though I'm the only Californian here.
That's
Wait, Kirk, I thought that you lived in Michigan.
No, I'm originally from Michigan.
I accidentally took Kirk out. Quick, sorry. I was trying to make you full screen, Kirk.
Oh no. Well, you don't have to. I was just goofing around.
Kirk's going to give us his thoughts on Gavin Newsom. So.
Oh no. I think goofy ass Gavin Newsom is horrible. I have a lot of videos. I have a lot of tweets where I have scrutinized this guy. I can't stand him. But I do think a lot of people on the right are, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not giving him enough respect in that I think I think he's really good at speaking with moral clarity and really knowing how to, like, especially with the debate with Hannity the other day, he really knows how to really speak in his favor and speak with moral clarity. And especially when I saw his debate in 2022 against his Republican opponent, he just mopped the floor with him, and it was painful to watch because I really don't like Gavin Newsom, and I'd like to see someone. I think the only time, because I saw this clip going around like 10 years ago when Adam Carolla had him on, and Adam Carolla is like the only person I've seen to really take him to task. But
I'm so
Interesting.
happy that you've expressed total disdain for Gavin Newsom.
Oh
He
my
is
God.
I dislike him as a person. I dislike him as a politician. His laws against the laws that he helped implement um in favor of like animal rights. When animals don't have rights, they can have protections. When he has implemented anti-fur legislation, really really dug it in for me. Anti hunting and trapping legislation he's implemented in. Um, when his wife goes around wearing furs all the time. There's a literal
perfect.
picture. Yeah, there's a picture of her recently wearing an entire fur coat, but he instituted a ban. He signed in a ban on coats after fur coats after a certain year period. So effectively, like at this point, you can't really sell new furs as a commercial business anymore. So I mean, it's just ironic. Like he to me is a professional gaslighter.
Yeah.
He just I
Well,
find
especially
him
when
to
it comes to
be
the gasoline topic, he's been gaslighting. This guy's
yeah
been like bragging, like we're leading the way on climate change, and I'm stopping drilling and fracking and this and that. We're
what
taking on the fight, which he has. And then
yeah
when gas prices in California during their peak, when they were twice as much as many states, he had the audacity to say they're ripping us off. It's like you're telling me the oil industry just is twice as greedy in California. Get the fuck out of here.
right
I will say this. Even okay, I get that he's a Democrat and he's part of the establishment, so he's bad. But Anna Kasparian says he's awful, and she lives in California, and she has been not terrible on issues of homelessness and housing and some other stuff. So even if she's calling him on his bullshit, you know he can't be great. I will
Seeing her
say,
call out liberal policies in California has been very fun to watch.
yeah, but it's gonna get her called a sellout. I mean, she's already been called that, so I guess what does she have to lose at this point? But Anna is kind of based sometimes. I'll just throw it
Yeah.
out there. She's wrong about a lot, but every so often she gets something right. And she's one of the few people who's willing to call Jank on his bullshit. Like, especially when he just like generally talks about stuff, like or generalizes, I should say.
Or
I will say,
I just did a video, I think a couple weeks ago, where there was like this clip of when Gavin Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco. He had this plan in 2008 saying, "Oh, we're going to eradicate homelessness like within 10 years or something."
bullshit.
And now it's like, yeah, now it's way worse. Especially if
Yeah.
you read Michael Schellenberger's book on this topic,
Mhm.
it's like maddening, like seeing like how California politicians have like tried to tackle homelessness for the last 2 decades.
Anna actually interviewed Michael Schellenberger on TYT.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, it's San Francisco is the name of his his book. He's got another book before that
Apocalypse Never, which is about
Yes.
the climate alarmism. Also really good.
I recommend both of them. What was I going to say? I will say this for Gavin Newsom: the fact that he's willing to go on Sean Hannity and hold his own is pretty impressive. I will
Yeah.
in this day and age that speaks to that speaks well of him. Even
Yeah, the word I was looking for is underestimate. I think a lot of people on the right are underestimating Gavin Newsom. He knows how to speak with moral clarity, and he knows how to turn debates and hard questions into his favor. He's as a politician, he's really good at that.
He looks, and it helps that it looks like if you had a box that said politician out of it, and you pulled it out of him, Gavin Newsom would be in there. He looks like he should be president. Let's be real. But okay, we got a super chat from Drewski, $5. Thank you, Drewski. What do you guys think countries experimenting with a 4-day work week and how AI can be used to make this a standard? So I have absolutely no problem with any particular firm trying a 4-day work week. If they want to do it and if they think they get good results, by all means. By the way, if they do get good results, obviously not every workplace is the same, but if they do get good results and more productivity, then they're just naturally going to go to that. You know, organized labor people like to talk about organized labor gave us the weekend. It's like, no, we became more efficient. That's why we didn't have to work 7 days a week because we were making more in 5 days a week. So that's one of the big reasons we got the weekend. And maybe that'll be the case with the 4-day work week. We'll see. Like I said, I'm all for any corporation, any business, whatever, trying it out and seeing if it works for them. I don't think it should be mandated, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you often see this a lot from people kind of lean left. They say, "Well, it's actually profitable. It's actually good. It will actually create increase productivity." And I think you were kind of alluding to this. Like, well, if it will, then companies will do it on their own. And from what I've seen, some companies have been successful with the 4-day work week, and that's the thing in a free market. Not all businesses are going to operate the same. Some businesses will have different demands from their employees than others, and
Yeah.
you let the free market figure that out, and you let workers decide how much they want to work, and let businesses decide what's best for their workers and what's best for their business.
It's sort of like the working from home thing. Like,
Yeah.
some businesses can do it and some can't. Obviously, a farmer really can't, Patty, unless I don't know, unless it really is all by computers and you're just controlling robots. And I guess you
Oh
could,
God, it
but
was.
I mean, this was with Henry Ford's $5 work day. Was like it made him much more competitive for labor. All of the top engineers and mechanics came to Ford, and he reduced a lot of turnover. And even though I think he more than doubled the average wage of automobile workers at the time, and it made him a lot more productive and profitable.
Yeah. So go on, Patty. Sorry.
No, I
Oh, sorry.
wasn't.
So yeah, I'm not inherently opposed to any of this. It's the problem with mandating it by law is you're necessarily going to affect businesses where that doesn't really suit their needs, where that's not productive. So it's like, just let businesses figure out what's best for them and then go from there. And like I said, this idea that it's just that's necessarily going to be worse for workers, that just doesn't hold up. Otherwise, we'd all be working in sweatshops, and we're not. So
I don't care what country they're talking about 4-day work weeks, and the one profession that will not have a 4-day work week, even in Nordic countries, farmers.
Yeah,
farmer. So
yeah, because it's like, oh well, that fruit's ripe. Nope, it's Saturday. We can't pick it. And it's like, okay, well,
no.
Good luck trying to run that shit. Anyways.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh shit, I lost my questions. Let's see here. You guys vamp. I gotta find these questions again.
Hi Kirk, how are you?
Doing pretty good. A few weeks ago, I ordered myself a custom-made Detroit Pistons teal jersey with my name.
Oh, nice.
Oh my gosh, awesome.
Those are awesome. By the way, my high school won girls soccer state and won baseball state. So very cool. That's why.
But I'm sorry, baseball is not as cool, right?
First of all, baseball is way cooler than soccer.
That's true.
Second of all, it was girls soccer, so that's like half of as good as a boys title. Also, the most famous alumni of my high school is Craig Counsell, who was the manager for the Milwaukee Brewers, and his son is on the baseball team, so that's pretty neat. But
cool.
Okay, let's see here. Favorite Republican in the primary, also not politics related. Favorite Zelda game. So in reverse order, my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask, though there are tons of good ones. There are very few bad ones. I've played almost all the Zelda canon games, and almost all of them are good. Some of them are better than others, obviously, but most of them are winners, and they continue to put in solid entries into that series with Tears of the Kingdom. My favorite Republican primary, or Republican in the primary, I have not reviewed all of them, but from what I've seen, I like Tim Scott the best.
You took my answer.
I've said I'm a one issue voter. Who's the best on Ukraine? And after, let's say that's settled by election day, then I'll look at other issues. But from what I've heard, Tim Scott's pretty good on that issue. So what do you guys think?
Tim Scott is not even the best candidate from the state of South Carolina. Get out of here.
Who else is running from South Carolina?
It's all about Nikki Haley, baby.
Oh, Nikki Haley.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, who's going to have that advantage in the primary? And the South Carolina is an early state. It's going to win Trump, but whatever. Yeah. Favorite Republican in the primary and favorite Zelda game. Kirk, you go first.
The only Zelda game I ever really played was A Link to the Past.
That's a good one. Okay,
so it would be that one.
Gotcha. Patty,
so
have you ever played a Zelda game?
I've never played a Zelda game, but I've watched. Like the problem is that in 1995 I was just born, so That's the problem. But
they make Zelda games every few years, though. That's no excuse.
I know, but I did not like see when one of my first video game consoles was the Nintendo, the Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
And then I think my first handheld was a Nintendo DS. So I had a Nintendo DS, and then my mom got us a Xbox 360. And then from then on, like, I've just been buying my own stuff. So
Gotcha.
at some point I'll get to play the Zelda games from the beginning myself, just as I've been doing with like Elder Scrolls. I've been out playing the Elder Scrolls series, trying to do them from the beginning as well. But I have seen walkthroughs. Yes.
You played this, so you played like the first 2 Elder Scrolls games?
Haven't played those 2 yet. I played Morrowind.
Gotcha, because Morrowind still has a community that likes it, but
yes, and actually I think some people still engage in like the modding of Morrowind.
Yep.
I don't mod Morrowind. I've recently modded my Skyrim game that's on my computer, and some of the mods on there are firstly, some people are absolutely demented, the mods that they add on Skyrim. And then but yeah, I've only like done legitimate like environmental or maybe new quest mods for Skyrim.
Okay.
But I have seen walkthroughs, and I think my favorite walkthrough of Zelda is Ocarina of Time.
Well, yeah. You had an N64, like that's usually, some people consider that to be the best game ever made, is Ocarina of Time.
I like Ocarina of Time. I like the music behind it. I like the obviously like the quality of the, I want to call it artwork, but the graphics of it is obviously like Nintendo 64 quality, like, so and actually on my Nintendo 64, one of my favorite games on there is called like Jet Force Gemini. Jet Force Gemini reminds me kind of Ocarina of Time. And then my favorite presidential candidate for nominee who's Republican is Tim Scott. I like Tim Scott. Yes, it's partly because he's Black. Yes, I'm joking. But yeah, I think that he's compared, and I like Nikki Haley too. I think that she's okay, but he seems like the most relatable, down to earth, not as caught up in cultural stuff. And it seems like when he does get caught up in cultural stuff, like you almost want to be able to look behind the camera and be like, who's holding you hostage? Like you can tell he's not into it.
Yeah, I definitely think Tim Scott is definitely one of the better Republicans right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I usually don't answer questions unless they're super chats in the chat. But Drewski has been very generous, and he asked one that I feel like answering. And so I'm just going to answer it. Will George R.R. Martin finish A Song of Ice and Fire? Almost certainly not. I honestly, at this point, I think we'll be lucky if we get Winds of Winter. Fact is, he's fat and old and doesn't take care of himself. And he takes forever to write. He takes forever to write his books. So, like, 6 months ago or so, somebody asked him, was like, oh, how far are you done? Or are you almost done with Winds of Winter? He's like, oh yeah, I'm about 2/3 done. And it had major, like, I'm 5 minutes away when you haven't left yet energy. So it's like, oh, this guy just takes forever to write books. And I will
finish their book first, George R.R. Martin or Cenk Uygur?
Cenk Uygur's book is coming out. So yes, it is coming out in September. By the way, I'm going to make a lot of videos on that one, but I really hope, I mean, I would love it if he finished it, but Game of Thrones was originally only supposed to be 3 books. And then he started writing. He's a Gardner writer. So, like, I don't know, Patty could tell us more about that, but it's like, you kind of let your being a Gardner writer, you kind of let your characters go where they will go.
Yeah.
And so it went from 3 books to being a 7-book series. And it's like, it's so expansive. It's going to be hard for him to wrap it up in 2 books. And I don't even think he's going to finish one of those books. So
I've talked to Steve about this, about my feelings on Game of Thrones. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of Game of Thrones. I think that Game of Thrones is the work of a senile old man who cannot get a girlfriend. Like that is, to me, that man, if you've ever seen the South Park bit, the South Park bit of George R.R. Martin, where they're just like, wiener, wiener, wiener. That to me is the embodiment of what Game of Thrones is. I am a Tolkien fan. I read Lord of the Rings books. I'm currently going through the Silmarillion. The Silmarillion is difficult, but I deeply enjoy it. I just cannot get into. I can't get into scrolling through his J.R.R.'s books and seeing penis in it every
George
time.
Martin, yeah.
Sorry, George Martin's books, and just seeing somebody got raped, somebody got penis. I just can't.
Okay, so I actually do like the Game of Thrones books. I have not read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I started the audiobook for The Hobbit, but I dropped off of it. I will pick it back up eventually, but I'm not anti Lord of the Rings. But friend of the channel, Actual Justice Warrior, actually makes a very compelling case for why Lord of the Rings J.R.R. Tolkien, which is usually cast as being like strictly good versus strictly evil, is actually a much more compelling moral story than Game of Thrones. So I advise you to look into him. And Sean is not anti Game of Thrones by any means, but
but he's got it down. Like, that's really Lord of the Rings is because Tolkien wrote it as a Christian work that was meant to like be a place in for mythology for Europeans. Mm-hmm. He really wrote the work as a defining difference between good and evil, and that evil always acts for evil, good always acts for good. Whereas Martin's books, the characters are ambiguous with their morality.
But the interesting thing is you would think that would lend itself to simplicity on Tolkien's part, but it's not. Having watched video essays, it's like these characters are a lot more compelling than originally given credit for, I think. But
it's like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, you can use, for example, like, we're getting ready to geek out. So you can use, for example, like Frodo's character. Frodo is an ostensibly good character. He is morally good. He's a good person, but the depiction of him being with the ring, being that it's twisting him, his morality, his ability to be a good person, and the fact that Frodo never falls into being a terrible person except for nearly the end. Like, Tolkien's trying to tell like this tragic tale about like the inner morality of a mortal, that like we cannot help but be like kind of fucked up on the inside if given enough push.
Interesting. And if you think there's a lot of sex in the show Game of Thrones, I advise you to read the books. Because
it's way less. It's way less.
No, it's way more.
Oh, never mind then. Never mind. What was that, Kirk?
That was Beavis and Butthead noises, wasn't it?
Oh.
Yeah.
I've read all the books, and then I'll listen to them on audiobook occasionally. And it's really funny. The audiobooks are recorded by this guy named Roy DeTrees, and he has some like Guinness Book World Record for most characters voiced, but really he only has like 5 different voices. And him describing the sex scenes is hilarious.
Oh wait, he has to read those out?
Yeah. He's like, and then Daenerys put his cock in her. And like, it's like, I posted one to Twitter once, and I know I've sent some to you, but it's laugh out loud funny to listen to him describe them. But
so yeah, and then I listen to podcasts and audiobooks. So I listen to the whole Glenn Beck arguing with socialists while working. And there are times like, and my coworkers, a lot of them are not conservative, some of them are progressives, and I'll just like be pulling weeds and just suddenly laugh out loud because Glenn Beck said something silly or stupid. Okay. And my coworker's like, "What are you laughing at?" And I'm looking at her and I'm like, how do I explain to my very progressive coworker that I love very much that I'm listening to Glenn Beck? Can't explain that.
Excuse me. Okay, easy question here. Who would you have voted for? Or no, never mind. I misread the question. Who would you have voted for in the 1968 Democratic primaries before June 6th? So the reason you put June 6th is because that's the day that Bobby Kennedy got assassinated. It was basically between Bobby Kennedy and Eugene McCarthy at that point. And between those two, I probably would have voted for Bobby Kennedy. But I will not be voting for Bobby Kennedy Jr. now. No.
Was Hubert Humphrey not in the race yet?
He did not run in any of the primaries. which goes to show how much different the process was then, because basically he was running for president, but he didn't bother going on the ballots because he knew that he was going to get all of Lyndon Johnson's delegates, and delegates were not apportioned like they are now. You didn't have to win contests to get those delegates. Delegates just voted by who they thought they should be the nominee at the convention. And so Hubert Humphrey had Lyndon Johnson's backing, and that's basically how he got the nomination. That wasn't guaranteed. They only had one ballot at the 1968 convention, but there were a lot of candidates like tossed around. Like there was a draft Teddy Kennedy movement because they thought he could pick up the mantle. Lyndon Johnson thought about getting back into it himself. Obviously Eugene McCarthy had lots of supporters, but ultimately it ended rather unceremoniously with the delegates selecting Hubert Humphrey. So there's a great book on it. It's called Playing with Fire. It's by Lawrence O'Donnell, and it will give you gives you the rundown of the 1968 election. It's really good. Okay. How dangerous do you consider the resurgent socialist movement among young adults in the US? That's really hard to say. Because they're very online right now, and online isn't real life. But I think that they are getting more sway in real life. Like prior to 2016, I seriously doubt Bernie Sanders would have done as well as he did in a Democratic primary, much less have been considered a major presidential candidate. Now, and I get that he's not like super duper socialist, but he's about as far left as you go in America. I feel like somebody with his ideas is more mainstream now than they once were. So, I think it is a genuine threat, but I think it's ugly American politics is much more likely to be nationalist than it is socialist, but I guess we'll see. What do you think, Kirk?
Yeah, it's definitely troubling, especially with the way socialism, I think, really since Bernie Sanders ran in 2016. I think before that, socialism, even amongst Democrats, was considered a dirty word. And I think between him and just the mainstreaming of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it's not so much that she's in Congress, but she's always on TV. A lot of people like to, yes, girl boss, yes, queen her. She's always on magazine covers. Stephen Colbert is always inviting her on his show to kiss her ass and whatnot. So, yeah, it is. That's what I'm more concerned about, where, I think younger people have always kind of been open to socialism before, but now they kind of have more legitimacy now because now they have heroes to look up to that are not really being scrutinized as much as they were before.
Patty?
So I definitely agree with Kirk about what he just said. Socialists are seen as like the cool, trendy group that obviously young people want to be a part of, cool, trendy movements. And for young people, like there's a saying that young people, when you're young, you're progressive because you tend to think a lot with your emotions. You tend to be like more amiable to the opinions of others as opposed to actual experience. And when you get older, you kind of grow more conservative over time. I think that's what you generally see with like the popularity of socialism versus popularity of capitalism. Socialism tugs at the heartstrings of life is so deeply unfair that we need to start legislating fairness. We need to legislate economic fairness as opposed to people work their way into fairness through just engaging with the market and the flow of the market. So, yeah, I think it's troublesome. I think like they just came out with a poll saying that young people are I don't know if they're overwhelmingly socialist, but more young people are identifying as socialists or communists than ever before, which is like which to me is like very problematic because these are young people who want government intrusion. Socialism is government intrusion at its core. So, yeah. Like I said, what Kirk said really like hit the nail on the head. I'm just beating a dead horse.
I think go ahead.
Someone in the chat says, I think Hassan, I think you're referring to Hassan Piker, has done a lot to present. Yeah, he's one of the cool hip kids on Twitch. Yeah. He gets a lot of attention. The intellectual landscape in America is full of, avowed socialists. So that doesn't help. It also doesn't help that the political right does a really terrible job at presenting an alternative. A lot of times they just have essentially socialism, but goes to church, as Austin Peterson likes to call it. Says that a lot of like today's like MAGA conservatives are just Elizabeth Warren that just goes to church. So it definitely is very concerning that kind of socialism is cool. Whether or not it will have an impact on electoral politics anytime soon, I think is a different question, but long term it's definitely a concern.
I believe the quotation you were reaching for, Patty, was the Winston Churchill one, that if you're young and you're conservative, you don't have a heart. If you're old and you're a liberal, you don't have a head.
Yeah.
And I probably butchered it, but that's the essence of it.
It's pretty, you got it.
There's sort of this idea that people start out when they're younger, they're progressive, then they become more conservative over time. I don't think that actually holds up. I think it's much more. I did a video about this actually. They tend not to change very much over the course of their life, and what their politics are in their formative years tends to be their politics throughout their life. So, it's hard to say because people say they don't like capitalism, which a lot of young people do now, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote in a certain way. So I guess we'll see. It's possible that the term capitalism has just gone out of favor, but the idea of economic freedom is still going to resonate. So I guess we'll find out, but I generally do think it's a threat. It's always going to be a threat. Sometimes it's going to be more of a threat, sometimes less. But okay, we got another super chat from Shake and Milks and our best. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
Chiaki and Mika. Chiaki and Mikan are the best.
Best. Okay. Anyways, $5. Thank you for the super chat. How would you suggest capitalists appeal to normal people? How do you think socialists are so good at it? Also, Bernie or Trump? I would take Trump over Bernie to answer it in reverse order. But the most persuasive case I've seen sort of against government action is called public choice theory. And the essence of public choice theory is this idea that government is necessarily going to be run by people. So if you're going to have the government doing something, it's going to be implemented by bureaucrats. And the essence of public choice theory is the idea that regardless of the system they're in, people will pursue their self-interests. And I think that resonates with people. Like, everybody knows that people are self-interested. So when you put them in a position of bureaucracy or, a position of authority within the government, they're much more likely to act in a self-serving way. And that's not because they're bad. That's just because they're people. That's how people behave. And so I think from that, you can extrapolate, well, there are going to be these consequences of government action in ways that are not beneficial to your average person. Whereas in a free market economy, they're a lot more constrained in their behavior. So that would be my general critique that I think is the best for capitalism. Now there's also the case of capitalism as an equalizing force. Like, I have the same phone that Elon Musk has because of capitalism. Essentially, you can but again, I don't think that equalization is necessarily a good thing in its own right. But also there's the liberty arguments. You should be able to exchange with whom you want, regardless of what other people think, and so on. Those are generally how I think I would make the case for capitalism. Why socialism seems so persuasive is mostly because we've convinced people that the status quo is just automatically capitalism. So you can point to any flaws in the status quo and you go, look at what capitalism did. This is why we need to nationalize things, or, whatever. And they just always invoke this hypothetical solution to something that would work if we did it. And if it doesn't work, well, then it wasn't really socialism. So, Kirk, what do you think?
You touch on something I was going to say, is that I think you first have to define your terms. I think it's not only people just say capitalism is whatever the status quo is, or capitalism is whenever someone makes money or whatever. Meanwhile, socialism is just whatever the government does, even like police and military are lumped in with that. So I think you have to be able to define both and explain and then just kind of reach them at where they're at. And I think more broadly, I think altruism is still prevalent in the culture. I think a lot of people in America are selfish to an extent, but they still have not abandoned altruism completely. And to the extent that they buy into altruism, which says that what's moral, what's good is the selfless concern for other people. So when you look at people like, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Bill Gates, who have all this money, on top of that, they definitely seem like they're interested in getting in bed with politicians. Meanwhile, you have all these problems. You see all these headlines about how insulin is like $1,000 a vial or whatever. It's not really that high. It's or like how housing is through the roof. It could be very easy. It could be very appealing to someone to think, yeah, capitalism is failing. It did have its day. What about the financial crisis? That was capitalism too. COVID was also capitalism's fault, as a lot of people would say. So you would have to define your terms and then get people to really think more about what they want out of life and kind of maybe change the way they think about ethics a little bit at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Patty? Oh, before you go, Patty, Trump or Sanders, Kirk?
Oh, God. Would I rather get hit by a bus or hit by a semi-truck? Real tough choice.
All right, yeah. I won't put your feet to the fire here. Patty, go ahead.
I'll answer the last question first. Trump. Okay. I would, if I was put in a booth, had to determine who, definitely Trump. But I thought it was interesting that what Kirk mentioned about how altruism has not gone away, like in accordance to ethics. And with the video that I'm working on, it reminds me of something that I hear socialists and Marxists like say a lot, is that to them, companies do things because it causes profit. And even if they feel good, like what they're doing is not, of course, it's not true altruism, because I don't think that any human can actually engage with true altruism. But
they even say this about philanthropy.
Yeah.
They just say, oh, it's for a tax write-off. It's to cleanse their reputation. They get very cynical when people start to act altruistically, like
exactly.
Bill Gates and
Exactly. They have tons of cynicism around, charity, philanthropy, and, whether companies do things out of the goodness of their heart or not. Even if they could look a CEO in the face and that CEO will say, I actually feel good about the things that I'm doing to help others. And they'll look at them in the face and say, well, it's the fact that you feel good. That's not altruistic. That's not selfless, because you still feel good. You should just do it, because I think that Marxists and socialists, they engage in there's a word for this, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but they refuse to accept the nature of just people. Mm-hmm. The nature of people is that we feel good by doing things that fulfill our desires, that fulfill our virtues and our ethics. Yes, it makes us feel good. That may not be total altruism, but it makes the whole world, it makes the world around you, around others, a better place. Why is that not enough?
Thomas Sowell talks about the fundamental difference between the left and the right, and that's sort of the tragic view of humanity versus what's the other one? I forget, but the left really thinks that humans need to be corrected and fit the institutions that they believe should exist. Whereas, and not all right-wingers by any means, because there's a lot of stupid right-wingers, but the right generally believes that institutions need to conform to human nature. And I think that's the fundamental difference. But that's a whole different tangent in its own right. We've been going for almost 3 hours, so I just want to do one more question. And I really like this question as one to close off. Charles Armstrong asked on Twitter, by the way, I apologize for not getting to every question. And I thank you for all the super chats you sent in.
I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, correct. Okay, Charles Armstrong sent on Twitter, I believe you described yourself as an optimist before. That's true. I do describe myself as an optimist. What's your outlook on the state of U.S. politics in 10, 20, 30 years vis-a-vis the populism collectivist trend? I'm not an optimist because of politics. I think politics is a very bad means of problem solving. I don't think that's where human ingenuity comes from. I think politics will continue to be a shit show. Hopefully it just doesn't consume the rest of our culture. Kevin D. Williamson, my favorite writer, has a book called The End is Near and It's Going to Be Awesome. And he essentially argues that eventually the government will not be able to pay its bills. And so by necessity, we're going to have to privatize a ton of stuff. And while that may sound bad to lots of people, that necessarily means that people will have to do problem solving outside of politics, which we're actually very good at. And so whether it's through private charity or through capitalist means, I think we'll continue to improve our lives. And the less we rely on politics to do that, the better. So, and the more we transition to a freer country or freer economy, the better. And I hope we continue to do that. But, we'll see. Are you guys optimists?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a political optimist. I think I deeply dislike doomerism.
Yeah.
I find doomerism to be, most of the time when people engage in like doomer politics, what they're doing is they're being manipulative. They want people to be scared so that they are more likely to be malleable to their, so that others are more malleable and fit into their beliefs. Some people just cannot exist without other people having different beliefs in them, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the same thing with things like climate change, same things with, I believe climate change has human involvement. However, I don't think that the things that we need to do is start regulating the amount of oxygen people breathe or the amount of like methane and CO2 that comes out of a cow. I think that innovation is ultimately going to solve a myriad of these problems. We've seen it solve a myriad of problems. We've seen our track record with things like climate change get better simply bought out of innovation. It's the same thing for things like diseases, vaccines, the treatment of livestock, the development of agricultural goods, all out of innovation and not just through government reactionary regulations. So I'm pretty positive about the future. I don't think that we're all going to die by a nuke. So,
but vaccines cause autism. Sorry,
you know what?
Bobby Kennedy just broke into my apartment and yelled into the microphone.
Bobby Kennedy, go away. I too want to be artistic, sir.
Kirk, are you an optimist?
Generally, yes, but like you guys said, like more you, Stephen, that outside of politics, I'm an optimist. I'm definitely not optimistic about the political landscape in America and where it's headed. But outside of that, like we were talking about earlier with artificial intelligence, mRNA technology, I think is very underappreciated. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting and wonderful developments with mRNA technology. And I think a lot of the anti-vax takes that we've been seeing the last couple of years are going to age like soiled milk. And I think ultimately what's going to probably keep us going for the long term is probably going to be innovation and technology and, dare I say, globalism. Because I think the more technologically advanced the world has become and the more, ever since the Cold War ended, really, countries have been, I know there's been pushes in Europe and the United States to impose like protectionism and go back to nativism. I'm not sure how long that will stick, but it seems like people are starting to learn from a few mistakes here and there when it comes to protectionism. And they're starting to recognize that international trade is a good thing, especially with the internet and how so many people have so much access to all this information and how we're able to communicate better than ever. And even with like nuclear technology, I think ever since the Ukraine war started and we saw how a lot of these countries in Europe had their foreign policy compromised because of their dependence on Russia, partly in result of shutting down their nuclear power plants, Germany. It seems like one thing the left and the right have been pretty good at, not politically, but just broadly, is they're starting to warm back up to nuclear energy as an alternative to fossil fuels. But as it got unfairly smeared for decades, and that had consequences. And we need to start rethinking our stance on nuclear energy. And if we go back to nuclear energy and you mix that with mRNA technology and artificial intelligence, a lot of great things could happen.
So, Kirk, I have my issues with the expression politics is downstream from culture. But I do think that oftentimes pop culture does inform our politics in certain ways. And I don't think that the show The Simpsons, which is a show that I love, has been good for nuclear power's reputation. Because you have this fat oaf, Homer Simpson, running the nuclear power station.
And Lisa Simpson is the hero of that show, remember?
She is.
Yeah.
So
when you look at Greta No Thunberg, she's basically real life Lisa Simpson, isn't she?
Yeah. Is Greta a vegan as well? I don't know.
Yeah, she is. She's she wants the world to be vegan.
I suppose she's an environmentalist. So there you go. Patty, you mentioned doomerism, and I detest doomers too. for a number of reasons. Because part of it's because they're so obviously emotionally invested in their position. I mean, everybody is, but them especially, because I think what they really want is they want our institutions to be very different. And
Yeah.
so they're very invested in the idea that the status quo is opposed to their institutions and things are just awful. And the worst thing about doomers to me is they think they're so subversive. They think they're so edgy. They think they're telling this dark truth that people just can't handle. It's like, and in reality, they're just playing into our most
Deepest
basic
fears.
biases. Yeah.
Yeah.
People have huge negativity bias for reasons we can get into, and they're just lazily playing into those. They're not telling dark truths that people can't handle. They're just full of shit for the most part.
Well, see, that's what like human. I don't know what it is. There's something about humans that we're attracted to morbid things.
Mhm.
We're attracted to telling dark, scary tales about the unknown instead of just exploring the unknown. We are deeply fearful of things that we cannot predict.
Yeah.
So I think that both socialists and populists play on these fears. It's disgusting. It really. I mean, I could go into 10-minute rants about this that I won't do now, but yeah.
Great. And I mentioned earlier about rational ignorance and how humans just aren't very good at politics, or not good at being like, oh, here's politician A and here are his issues, and here's politician B and here are her issues, and you need to decide which one is better.
Right.
We're just not good at that. We're much better at specialization. And once you specialize in something, you can collaborate with someone else who has specialized in something else. And like Kirk said, that's globalization. The further you expand that, the better. And as far as we put our pursuits to that end, we're going to get good results.
Right.
As long as people are protected in their property and have basic safety needs protected, we're very good at solving problems and collaborating with one another. So that's why I'm an optimist. But either way, it's been a great stream. We've gone for just over 3 hours. Again, I'm sorry I didn't answer all the questions. I'll get to them some other time. Thank you, Kirk and Patty. Patty, why don't you give us your pitch? What do you got? Where can people get a hold of you?
Who are you asking? I cut out for
You,
a second.
Patty.
Me? Oh.
You've got a YouTube channel, right?
So, yes, I do. So I have a YouTube channel called Farmer Patty. I talk about agricultural politics, food politics, agricultural economics, and I'm currently like collecting footage on my current year doing agricultural activities. So I mostly do crop farming. I don't work with animals as much as I used to work with animals when I first started doing agriculture. But as of for now, I am working on a diverse array of crops and about 2 acres of pumpkin field, which doesn't sound a lot, but we're producing over 6,000 pumpkins this year. So so if you are interested in agricultural stuff and food politics, or why your food costs the way it does, and how food is produced on scale, both like macro and micro scales, then follow me. I'm hoping to get more videos out. Just be very patient with me.
Well, as I say here on the Stephen Michael Davis channel, yes, indeed, pumpkin seed.
Yep.
Kirk, what do you got for us?
You can find me on Twitch at Kirkomania, on Twitter at Kirk Wilcox, or just look me up on YouTube, Kirk Wilcox, where I upload a new video every week. Some of my favorite videos that I've made are my videos titled How the FDA Saved Americans from Affordable Drugs, Operation Ajax, Iran's Game of Thrones, and GameStonk, How Redditors Enriched Wall Street. So if you're new to my channel, I'd recommend checking out those 3 videos first.
Those are some of Kirk's best videos, and I think his video today might be one of his best. Just throwing that out there, but check it out. Patty, Kirk, thank you so much for joining me. This was a great discussion. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Of course.
Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you, speaking of Vietnam, Kirk, thank you to the doctor who insisted that my dad could not be drafted into Vietnam. so that I am born today. Thank you to all the fathers out there. It was his blood pressure. I think he's told me the story before, but my dad was this close to getting drafted to Vietnam, but he was towards the end of it because he was born in 1952. So by 1970, he was eligible, and he just missed it. But it wasn't because he did anything immoral or illegal or anything like that. But had he gone, I would not be born. So thank you. All right. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Take care, guys.